twice. That's right, yeah. Oh, okay. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Ferndale City Council meeting for Monday, March 14th, 2016. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you very much. Barb, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Leaks May.
Here.
Martin.
Here.
Pollica.
Here.
Piana.
Here.
Mayor Coulter.
Here, thank you. We have a quorum this evening. The next item of business would be the approval of the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Support.
It's been moved by Piana, supported by Martin. Any discussion on the agenda? Barb, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Pollica.
Yes.
Piana.
Yes.
Leaks May.
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Mayor Coulter.
Yes, thank you. The agenda is adopted. Moving on now to presentations, and we have several of them this evening. The first one is a presentation by our Chief of Police to present some awards in his department. Good evening, Chief.
Good evening, Your Honor. I was yelled at last time, but not having a microphone.
The mics help for folks at home to hear you.
Good evening, everyone. It's always an honor to be able to come up here and talk about some of the good things that our officers have done. This evening, I would like to present a case. I'd like to have Officer Cousdale and Officer White step up here. This award actually also goes to Dispatcher Wallowik, who actually received the Certificate of Merit, the second highest award that we have, Certificate of a unit commendation for these two officers. Also, Detective Goebel, who is undercover, and for obvious reasons we don't make those presentations in public, but we'll talk about him, and Detective Moore, who couldn't make it tonight. Dispatcher Wallowik apparently is buying his first house, and he is signing the papers, so he couldn't make it either. So he had a pretty good excuse.
That's pretty good.
This incident occurred on January 28th in the evening hours, about 8:16 p.m. Ferndale cars were dispatched to a robbery that had just occurred at the White Castle on Woodward Avenue. This is a Craigslist, one of those Craigslist robberies. 3 suspects had arranged for a Craigslist deal to purchase an Xbox game console, and ultimately when the individuals arrived with the Xbox, they robbed them of this device. Officer White, Officer Ferris observed a suspicious male walking away from the scene when we had originally been told that all the suspects had left in a vehicle. Once the Officer White relayed this information to Officer Collette, who then located some of the victims' discarded property on the church there at 8 Mile and Hilton Road. Officer White and Ferris reviewed their in-car video systems and were able to obtain a description of the suspects. In the meantime, Dispatcher Wallowik, who had received the phone numbers from the victims of this crime, began, with his expertise and knowledge of the police databases as well as social media, began to use those numbers and was able to identify 3 possible suspects as well as their vehicle used in the crime. Through the Dispatcher Wallowik's investigation, he also established the suspects' relationship through their schools that they attended and played sports together with, and their employment history. Detective Goebel was called into service. He's our narcotics officer. He was called into service after hours. Using his investigative techniques, Detective Goebel was able to locate 3 suspects sitting in a vehicle in the city of Detroit in a neighborhood on the east side. Officer Goebel had Officer White and Cousdale respond to that location in a marked patrol car and effected a traffic stop with the assistance of the Highland Park Police and the Detroit Police. Once the stop was initiated, the officers White and Cousdale quickly arrested 2 of the suspects. A third one escaped on foot. After the arrest, Detective Moore obtained confessions from the 2 arrestees, so we were able to establish that they were, in fact, the individuals who committed that robbery, and we were able to identify the third party as well. These individuals have been charged with unarmed robbery and larceny charges through the Oakland County Prosecutor's Office. The diligent effort between not only the patrol officers, the Detective Bureau, and the dispatcher, I really think shows quite a pretty good understanding of how these officers work well together. They're able to take these very predators off the street that we obviously want to put away. So we would like to present tonight, at least publicly, Officer Coosdale and Officer White with the unit commendation.
While you do that, first of all, congratulations, officers. Thank you very much for all you do to protect our citizens. And I want to remind the citizens, speaking of the fact that this was a Craigslist interaction, is that we have a Craigslist safe zone in front of the police department where if you're going to make transactions with strangers around the Craigslist or other kinds of advertising, that you should do it there, right, Chief?
And that was really my next words, but apparently the mayor. But yes, it's exactly true. But it is. No, I'll give you a second.
It bears repeating.
And that situation is set up exactly to prevent this type of situation. A lot of things, legitimate transactions can occur on Craigslist, but a lot of bad people are hanging out there. If you tell them to come and make that transaction at the police department and they say no thank you, that's a clue.
That's exactly right. Yep. Thank you. Thanks, guys. All right. Our next presentation is the introduction of the new Ferndale Housing Commission Director. And who's going to introduce
Ann
that?
Heller is.
Ann is going to
Yes.
introduce. Ann is a member of the Housing Commission, is going to introduce our new housing director.
Stop the clock.
Good evening.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, I'm here, Ann Heller, 1024 Leroy, but today I'm here not for FernCare, but for the Ferndale Housing Commission, and a very, very happy moment it is. On September 23, we initiated a search for an executive director. By February, the search committee had narrowed the number of applicants to the point where it was appropriate for the commission to meet and interview candidates. We chose Heather Van Pooker. She comes to the commission with a strong background in organization design, organization culture, and operations management. She was previously the Director of Information and Policy Research for the Michigan Municipal League out of Ann Arbor. The Board of Commissioners considers her experience and background, as well as her enthusiasm for working with both the Ferndale Housing Commission community and the larger Ferndale community, exactly what the Housing Commission requires at this time. And before I do the absolute introduction, I have to thank the committee that did that. We could not have done it without Jennifer and April from the city. Dan Martin sat on the committee, and our Tenant Commissioner, Carol Morency. They really, really did good work. And with that, we are excited, and we look forward to working with her. Please welcome Heather Van Pooker as the new Executive Director of the Ferndale Housing Commission.
Yes.
Please.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. It is quite literally my first day. I just want to thank everyone for the warm welcome. I'm thrilled at the opportunity to work here within the Ferndale community, and I just am so excited to be here. And I look forward to getting to know everyone better. I've had some introductions already with some staff members, and I just think it's going to be a rich, rich opportunity, and I'm so thrilled to be here. Thank you so much.
Great. And I'm sure you've heard it, but if there's anything the city can do to support your efforts, we know you're an independent board and all of that, but if there's whatever we can do, please lean on April and our staff. We want to help you succeed.
Thank you. The leaning has commenced.
We're Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming tonight, too, on your first day. All right, our next presentation is the Recreation Department, and I believe that Sarah and Chris are here to make that presentation, right? Or just Sarah?
Nope, Chris is here.
Okay.
So this year, we're doing something different with our egg hunt. Instead of having it over at the Kulik Center, we are partnering with the Dales neighborhood and then the Renaissance Vineyard Church, and we're having it at our 4 local parks, so Garbett, Wilson, Martin Road, and Geary. And what's going to happen is the times are staggered, so everyone can either go to one park or all of the parks, and they'll hunt there. And then we ask for everyone to meet back up at Martin Road Park for light refreshments, get a photo opportunity with the Easter Bunny, and just mingle with other people within the community. We're excited for this event. We feel like it's going to be the biggest egg hunt the city's seen, and we're hoping that everybody comes out. It's March 19th from 1 to 3, and we're excited. I know Jim and Everett are just as excited as I am, and we'll see how it is. The weather is supposed to be okay on Saturday, so I'm hoping for sun and 50-degree weather. And now I'm going to introduce Chris Lely. He oversees some of our youth and adult programs that we have here, and he's going to be talking about some of the new events that we have coming up. Just click on that.
As Sarah said, I'm Chris Lely with the Recreation Department. I'm going to be talking about we have a bubble soccer tournament, adult co-ed bubble soccer tournament. It would be the first one in Michigan. There have been some in other states, but it would be the first one we had here. I'll go along with the presentation here. We are partnering with Motor City Bubble Soccer and Bouncing Bubbles. They provide the bubbles that we use for the event, and they've been helping us out a lot too. Some information, it will be the May 21st. First games will begin at 10 a.m. We're going to have it at the Ferndale High School football field on the turf field, so we'll have 2 games at a time. It's $240 per team. You can have up to 8 players, so that comes out to $30 per player on your team. Your registration fee includes official tournament T-shirt. The champions of the tournament will get an award, and you'll play at least 4 games that day. Some game information. You'll have 6 players on the field at a time. It's co-ed, so you have at least 2 males and at least 2 females on the field. They're 10 minutes long. I know that doesn't seem long, but I have a video at the end here, and you'll see that you'll get pretty tired after the 10 minutes there. You're guaranteed at least 4 games, and the top teams in the divisions will play in the championship. And here's a little bit on the tournament format. We'll have 4 divisions. And 4 teams in each division. This is depending on how many registrations. We'd like to get 16 teams. We'll have 4 teams in each division. You'll play 3 games within your division, and then you have 1 outside of your division, so you play those 4 games. Each division winner will play in a semifinal match. So Division A will play Division B, and then Division C will play Division D, and those will be the semifinal matches. And the winners of those semifinal games will play in the championship, and the champion will receive the award at the end there. Here's just some pictures I have of what the bubbles look like and what you'll be playing in if you play in this tournament here.
Oh my goodness.
So you're actually in the bubble?
You're in the bubble when you're playing. Yep.
You can bump into people?
You can bump into people, yes. There are very few rules.
I envision a council team forming.
Yeah, there we go.
Totally.
And I have a video too, so I'll have to. There we go.
Excellent.
Yeah.
There you go.
There we go. And then we'll go right.
That sounds fun.
Can we wear them in here?
And here's a little 2-minute video too, so you kind of get the feel of what the event will be like.
Oh my gosh.
That would pretty much be me on the ground there.
Oh gosh.
I think you found the one thing that could get me to exercise.
Oh my gosh.
That's awesome.
I think he lost his shoes.
Good luck tying them.
I know.
Jeez.
She could just like nail people. You don't think this has been played in Michigan before?
It is. There hasn't been a tournament, though.
Hasn't been I got you.
Yeah, this would be the first tournament in Michigan. There has been in other states, but we had the first tournament here in Ferndale, in Michigan. So there's only one other league, too, around here, and that one's in West Bloomfield. So it's, we're trying to introduce it here. So I think it'd be a pretty popular thing.
That's really fun.
Yep, and we're working with local restaurants and businesses, too, for sponsorship and stuff like that, trying to get them involved in it also, so. Registration you can do online at the website, over the phone, and in the office also. We're currently taking registrations. Like I said, we'd like to get 16 teams. That's our goal. And also, just add something else on too. We do have a youth baseball clinic we're working with Ferndale High School. We're trying to do more things with the high school too. We have a youth baseball clinic this Sunday in the gym, put on by the varsity and JV coaches. They're going to be running that. So, and we're also doing a basketball one in the summer with the varsity basketball coaches too, though. So, okay.
Great.
Yep. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Chris.
That also happens to be the same day as Clean the Ferndale Up.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, same time too.
Oh, same time?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, our next presentation is a report on our EMS. And I think John and or Brian, or just John, you're going to do this report?
Captain Dwight.
All right. Come on up.
Thank you, Your Honor, and City Council for having me here tonight.
Yep.
Back on February 8th, Chief Sullivan presented council with a report during call to council, and it was EMS system report from EMS survey team. I'm very pleased to announce that our ambulance crews are courteous and kind to every patient they come across, and it was evident in the survey, and that's always a concern when we send out surveys. We have a feeling we know how it's going to come back, but we hope, and it came back very, very well. In the database, overall, we ranked 9 out of 108 different agencies. So that was pretty good for our first time out. Most of the high scores, or the highest scores I should say, were in patient satisfaction with our crews. And we stressed customer service, and we were very happy to see that was coming through. And I just want to, they may be listening out there right now watching the broadcast, and I just want to tell them thank you guys for doing what you guys do and doing it politely and courteous and keeping our citizens happy, because that's the most important thing. The lowest scores fell under comfort and cleanliness of our ambulance, and I'll touch upon that in just a little bit. Only 2 of the 25 questions scored below average, and it was on comfort and cleanliness. However, it has to be said, we want 30 reports for this to be statistically significant. There was only 21 survey respondents this month for the month of January. February, we didn't have very many respondents, so we're waiting for March, and we're going to see what the aggregate data looks like. The highest positive scores, and what we did was I met with several other EMS coordinators from the other Oakway agencies to determine how they were reading this, and we discussed the best way for us to determine how we're doing in this database. And what we discovered was, on the side you'll see on the pages from, it's page 4 to around about 9, you see the bar graphs going down the page, and you'll see the green and red numbers over on on the right-hand side of the columns there. We only had 2 with red numbers, and that was cleanliness and comfort. So those were the only 2 variants that we had that were below the average of what was in the database. Now, as far as the comfort of the ambulance was, it's an ambulance ride. That is always the lowest score that everybody seemed to get in the database, but we were even below the lowest scores. So we want to take a look at that. Chief Sullivan and I have several conversations over the comfort of the ambulance and possibly the ride, looking at the suspension and things like that. As far as cleanliness of the ambulance, we took a good hard look at that as well. Not quite sure. We weren't as far variant into the lower half as what we were on the comfort portion. So I want to wait and see a little more aggregate data. I did notice we have a black floor on the ambulance, and when we rolled the ambulance, the stretcher in and out, the left tire tracks. And so we were wondering if maybe that was part of it or something of that nature. The 2 highest scores variant away from normal was the extent services were worth the fees. And I thought that was, citizens feel they're getting value for their services, and that's important. And then I want to thank Chief Collins and dispatch, the helpfulness of the person that you called for the service. That was under the dispatch category, and that's directly related to the person that answered the 911 call. This is the portion, this is all that I had on the survey. It's new. I've gone through this several times, and I believe we just need a little more aggregate data for me to be able to pull a great deal more out of it, although I do have to say the direction that we're in right now is certainly looks good and are moving in the right direction. Moving into ambulance billing. During that presentation of Chief Sullivan on February 8th, Councilman Martin mentioned that he'd like to see some billing information that we had provided in the past. So I threw together some information and some slides. Up on the screen right now, that's currently our billing schedule. And you'll note on there that we're in the range on all items with the exception of ALS non-emergency and BLS non-emergency. Those 2 items we don't regularly do. That's interfacility transfers. These schedules change from time to time, and Chief Sullivan and I discussed it a little bit today. It's something that we'll look at in the future if we need to adjust. The other one was oxygen. Again, these schedules fluctuate. We changed the fee schedule, I believe, last summer, and that might be something we look at changing in the near future. Now, in ambulance billing, when you look at how much is billed...
I'm sorry, if I could just...
Sure.
On that last one that you did, you have the suggested fees column. Who... Suggestions of
I'm
who?
sorry.
Who dictates that?
These suggestions come from our billing agency, Acumed,
Okay.
and all of this data did come from Acumed Web.
Thank you.
Our billing company. This is the billing fee schedule contractual adjustments. And why this is important is when you look back at this slide and we say we charge $600 for an advanced life support run, we look at this and we discover that Medicare, when we have an advanced life support run, only pays $426. We have to write off the remainder. Medicaid, $191, and Blue Cross and Blue Shield, $550. And so with the pie charts that are up there now, what you see is Blue Cross and commercial insurance we get the best reimbursement for. We get the larger piece of the pie, and we write off about $49.72 from Blue Cross. Medicare, a little better piece, a little smaller piece of the pie, but still not too bad, $426, and we write off $174. And Medicaid is the smallest piece of the pie with $191 for an ALS run. Now, self-pay is not up here. Self-pay gets the full amount of the bill. However, the return rate on a self-pay is only 4 to 6%.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
When you mean return rate, do you mean a delinquency rate?
Yes, we only receive nationally, according to Acumed, you only get 4 to 6% of those.
So there's a 94% delinquency rate on self-pay.
Right. This is our payer mix, moving into this. And the next slide will show the whole big picture all together. At this point in time right here, between 2013 and 2014, we notice a distinct change in our self-pay. We floated right around anywhere between 23 and 28% on self-pay. The Affordable Care Act in 2013 and into 2014 lowered our self-pay rate from 18% and then down to 10%. In looking at this chart, most of them went into Medicaid. Most of the people that were self-pay that moved from self-pay to something moved to Medicaid. However, we did see a little bit of an increase in commercial, but nothing really statistically significant. And this last slide denotes annually in 2015, we had 1,007 billable runs. Those are runs where we transported a person to the hospital, where we provided ALS care in the field, and then the person decided they did not want to go to the hospital. Our run volume, our ALS run volume, 457 runs. Our basic life support value, which bills out a little bit lower, 546 runs. And ALS treat no transport 4. We billed out a total gross charges of $655,789. The contractuals I spoke of before, we wrote off $288,000. And we collected $300,000. Our average run reimbursement per run went from $276 to $298 dollars per run. And our rate of return was about 82%, and that was calculated by taking the gross charges, deducting the contractuals because we had to write those off, and then we took the $300,000 and divided it into that number and came up with 82%.
This slide has great data, so I really, really do appreciate this. It's startling to me that if just a back of the envelope calculation, then $198,000 of that is self-paid delinquency. And what are our procedures in place to move to collections, or do we not chase, or does the billing company have a process to chase these charges?
Currently, Acumed chases the customer for a little while, and then after a couple of months, they turn it over to Ann Arbor Credit. And at Ann Arbor Credit, once a month, I get a statement from Ann Arbor Credit with a list of individuals who are delinquent, and I sign the paper, and they try to determine if they can determine some sort of payment.
Okay. Thank you.
I assume, though, that past delinquency wouldn't prevent a future, or maybe I shouldn't assume this, but does past delinquency impact future ability to use the service?
No, not at all.
I wouldn't think so.
No, not at all. And they're courteous, too, according to the...
They're really nice.
I bet. Any questions? Thank you. That was very thorough and very helpful. Any questions of John?
I'm curious to know if the individuals who are delinquent, when it goes to collections, is their credit affected? Because I know with hospital bills, it's treated a little bit differently.
Yes.
Okay.
After a certain period of time, it does start affecting their credit. And the reason I know this is periodically we'll get a letter from the billing company or the collection agency saying, can you please not have this affect my credit? I'm attempting to buy a house or something of that nature.
Right.
Do we in any way try to work out like a payment program?
That is the first step. Ann Arbor Credit, that's one of their first steps, and anytime they work out a payment program, they contact us to see if we're good with the payment program. Most of the time, though, they set up something short and it gets paid off in a timely manner.
Okay, thank you.
John, on the demographics page in the other report, not in your slides, you list categories that start at 18. Do we not do children?
As far as the
number of people who
I see
who requested service, it starts at 18 to 30 and then goes up to 65 and older.
I believe it's the survey participant. I have not excluded children from the survey, but that is an excellent question. I'll ask the survey company because I didn't catch that one.
I'm just curious. Okay, thank you.
If I may, through the chair, is there a revenue opportunity potentially without sacrificing availability to residents to do more facility to facility, because they rarely be self-pay and probably more commercially billed, which is our highest rate of return on a run. So is there room there or opportunity there to market that more and possibly generate additional revenue with the trucks while they're idle?
The only issue with that type of service is we would have to take our one ambulance out of service for a period of time to do the scheduled transfer, and in the event that we caught another emergent run, the client that we would be doing the scheduled transfer for would then go elsewhere.
Sure.
We would never be able to sustain something like that.
Okay, well, thanks.
At this time.
Congratulations on the survey results, though. That's fantastic, and this is good information. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it. All right, our next presentation is the Ferndale Area District Library, and I believe our librarian is here with one of her board members, and they've got goodies. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
There you go.
All right. Hello, Ferndale.
Hello.
Hello,
So,
library.
I can start. I'm starting our library presentation with our kickoff of Ferndale Reads tomorrow.
Yes. So I'm here tonight to announce our 2016 Ferndale Reads selection. We are reading Station 11, a novel by Emily St. John Mandel. And as you probably recall, every year for many years now, the Ferndale Library has brought the community a different Ferndale Reads selection. It's a community-wide reading program, and we try to get as many people in the community reading the same book, and we do a lot of fun, interesting, different kind of programs around it for several weeks. So we're really excited about Station 11. It's also the Great Michigan Read this year. So people throughout the state will be reading this book and talking about it. We have an excellent lineup of programs this year, culminating in a visit to Detroit by the author. And we actually have a bus that will be taking Ferndale readers to the event in Detroit at the end of the program. So, and a lot of different things going on in between that. And through the generosity of our friends of the Ferndale Library and the Neal family, we are able to distribute copies of the book free of charge to as many people that would like them until we run out, while supplies last. Yeah. So we wanted the council to be among the first to receive a copy of the book, so we have several to hand out tonight. Thank you.
And since I'm going on vacation and I needed something to read, this is perfect timing. What kind of a book is Station 11?
It is another post catastrophe book. Last year, you'll remember we did Birdhouse? No, Bird Box. That's it. Which was very different. It's not a book I would have chosen to have read on my own, but I'm really glad I did because I couldn't put it down. So I'm looking forward to this one this year. Inside, you'll find a schedule of events related to the Ferndale Reads campaign, and a nice little bookmark from the Friends of the Ferndale Library, which for just $20, your entire family can become a member of, and that really helps support library functions and your community.
Cool.
Again, I really love the book. There's a lot of different layers to it, and we're really excited about the different programming. So we hope that you check it out and join us.
Definitely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Also happening at the library this month on Tuesday, the 22nd, is another family story time. They're now twice a month, and this month's theme is jungles. And I see disappointment. Our tarot card coloring, I've just been sent a message psychically, has become full. So while registration is required, the registrations are full. We're so sorry we can only accommate so much. But,
You didn't see that coming?
They came out of the blue. But if you'd still like to, that was sponsored by with the Boston Tea Room. They are creating a sacred space where you can possibly do your own coloring a couple days later on the 27th.
It's like I told you, the coloring is really popular now, isn't it?
It is.
You guys could do that every week. Yeah.
We're going to have multiple shifts going around the clock.
I'm telling you.
Early literacy program continues. There are programs for the very young, the still young, the everyone's young, and there's also branching out services where preschools and daycares can call the library and arrange book drop-offs and story time readings.
And the wish we were young.
And then going into April, the Cat Faye is hosting a Paws and Tiny Tales preschool reading program, and that'll be at 9:30 in the morning.
Wow.
Very nice.
Thank you, Ferndale.
All kinds of good stuff going on. Thank you. Appreciate it, and thanks again for the book.
There'll be copies of the book. It looks like they're being handed out, which is nice. I don't normally do that, but Jessica is much more polite than I am. We'll also leave some copies on the back table, and you're welcome to take one and join in the fun this month.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And she's not on the agenda, but I see our county commissioner is in the house getting a free book, as a matter of fact. I could tell you were here because you have the annual report that's out. So Commissioner Zach is here to share with us all things Oakland County.
First of all, in the media, they've been talking about the Zika virus, and Oakland County does have a Zika virus plan, and they have contributed $150,000 toward that. And it's similar to what we did with the West Nile. There's education, there was education for cities, and a whole program rolling out, so we will be prepared if we get the Zika virus here. But also, I do want to encourage people to remember to wear bug stuff because it is spread by mosquito bites mostly. So just like West Nile, wear bug stuff. Regional Transit Authority, I know that that council person, Melanie Piana, serves on the Citizens Advisory Council with me. There are meetings to look at the plan for the corridor. There's one on Tuesday, March 29th at the Aloft location, 4 to 7. And then there is one that's going to cover all of the corridor, previews. And then the Woodward Avenue corridor preview for the regional transit plan is on Saturday, April 2nd, 10 to 12:30 at the Crowfoot Ballroom at 1 South Saginaw, Pontiac. I do encourage anybody that wants to give input into this plan, the corridor plan, please show up at that meeting and let them know what you think about it. There's this wonderful opportunity. I don't know if you've heard about Leadership Oakland, but it's a leadership group for adults. But there's also a Junior Leadership Oakland. And this was started a couple years ago, and it is for high school seniors. If you're, on the verge of graduation, junior or senior, you can apply for the Junior Leadership Oakland group. And you can find information on the Leadership Oakland website, leadershipoakland.com. And the applications are due by April 15th, 2016. And what it promises to do, create opportunities for students to build their leadership potential, expose students to a wide variety of career paths, provide access to a network of professionals, and foster a commitment to community involvement. It's really a fabulous program, and I hope that we do have someone from Ferndale apply and take advantage of it. That's it this evening. Any questions for me?
Any questions for the Commissioner? As always, thanks for being here. Appreciate it. All right, that concludes our presentations this evening. The next item of business would be our call to audience, and that is your opportunity for those of you who are here with us in the audience to come address council on any issue that you would like that's not on the agenda, because we'll give you an opportunity to talk about that when we get to that portion of the agenda. So if there's anything you'd like to share with council, you have 3 minutes. Come on up, give us your name and your address, and share any thoughts or concerns that you have. Racing.
Hi, I'm Sharon Chess, 1119 Earl Boulevard.
Good evening.
And I'm here on behalf of the Ferndale Community Concert Band. Our next concert is going to be Sunday, April 3rd at 3 o'clock in the afternoon in the auditorium of the Ferndale High School. We have the pleasure of having another very amazing musician, and she is the associate professor of trombone in the School of Music at Michigan State University, and she will be joining us that day. So if you've never been to one of our concerts, this is the perfect time to come. If you have been to one of our concerts, then you know how amazing we are, and continue to come, bring friends and family. It is a free concert, and lately, without me, they've been having a bake sale, so, you know, put $10 in your pocket and buy some cookies and cupcakes on your way out. It is a free concert. And our website is fcconcertband.org. Also, what we're looking for, if you live in a unique area of the community where you have a lot of high traffic, and you'd like to host one of our lawn signs for the week prior to the concert, we'd really appreciate that. Just go on our website, send us an email, and we'll drop a sign off, and we'll pick it up the day after the concert. So that would help us get more community involved and make it more aware that everybody knows that there's a free concert. So then on another note, in regards to the ambulance and not being able to collect, could that not be done like the water bill, delinquent water bills, where if somebody doesn't pay, it kind of rolls onto their taxes at a later time? Just something for consideration. And then another option is my husband and I go away every winter, and when we come back, my most favorite thing to do is to drive down 9 Mile and Woodward and Hilton and Livernois to see the change. And I am never disappointed. It is amazing. You guys do a tremendous job along with the DDA and everybody else who's involved in always making our community better. Makes me proud. Thank you.
Well, you make our community better too. Thank you.
Welcome home.
All right. Who else would like to address council this evening? And the concert band is really good. She's not just saying that. They are amazing. Good evening.
Hello, I'm Debbie Rossman, and I recently put in a proposal for a piece of property here in Ferndale. My husband and I lived in Ferndale for 28 years, and we lost our house. And we just want to come back, but it's the only way that we can come back. So I didn't want to cry, but I really miss being here, and we just wanted to say that it's our only way back. So yeah, that's all. I just wanted to say hi.
Oh, thank you. It's really
yeah,
nice to see you. Thank you for coming. Appreciate it. Is there anyone else that would like to address council this evening? Yeah.
Good evening, Your Honor.
Good evening.
Council members, ladies and gentlemen. I'm John from 255 Livernois. And first, I'd like to just merely compliment the city of Ferndale on having an open forum like this where any citizen can step up and make his or her contribution to the overall process. It's a great thing. It's what America's all about. Second, I'd like to commend Candace L. over at Our Little Big World, who happens to be one of our neighbors, on her hard work for providing safe, educational, and fun environment for kids during off-school times. And they're doing a lot of work in that area, as well as Flint Water Drive. And third, I'd like to thank Ferndale Friends, Stephanie Lovelace, Sherrod, and Barney for the flattering, outstanding article they did on my, concerning me. It talks about our incident, but it also gives some insight as to who we are and what we do. And I want to give them a special thanks for presenting me with a enhanced version of the article, above and beyond the call of duty. It's really a nice thing. They didn't have to do that. And third, and not least, I and a lot of my neighbors are pleased with what the city of Ferndale has done with Livernois by cutting some of the laneage, making it bicycle and jogger friendly, and just safer and more peaceful in general. Are there less cars on the road? No, it's just the people that were using Livernois as a drag strip between 8 Mile and 9 Mile have chosen alternate routes. So it makes our area much better. And that's what brings me around to the resolution opposing the widening of I-75. I agree with Your Honor and Councilwoman Piana that we need to fix what we got rather than, widen it. In fact, some statistics suggest that when an intersection or a stretch of highway is made physically larger, it attracts more motorists and has the reverse Livernois effect, and we have, not less congestion. This philosophy helps keep Ferndale in step with other progressive and diverse cities across Oakland County and the whole nation for that matter, that creates a vibrant downtown district while still preserving our parks and green spaces, making a unique balance, making Ferndale a great place to visit and an even better place to live.
Thank you. Thanks,
Good
John.
evening.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks for coming. Appreciate it. You've been waiting patiently.
No, not really. My name's Jamie D'Angelo. I own New Way Bar, 23130 Woodward. And I'm just here to say hello and let you guys know it's been 3 years this March since I've owned the New Way. And things are going great. And I'm really happy to do business here in Ferndale. It's a great city to do business in. And a lot of you have been very helpful to me in my first few years.
Good.
And I appreciate it.
Glad to hear that.
That's it. Thanks. And good to see you all.
I just wanted to say to you, I just also want to thank you for the work that you've put in with the schools, how generous you are with the
thanks.
fundraisers and supporting our kids.
Yeah, we do a lot of fundraisers. I'm happy to do that.
It's well known, so thank you.
Great. Thanks.
Thanks, Jamie. Thanks for coming by. Anyone else want to address council this evening? Not that we're opposed to all these compliments, but if there's any criticisms, we're here for that too. All right, I guess not. Seeing none, then we'll move on now to the consent agenda. The consent agenda is items that council considers routine and we enact in one motion unless council pulls something from the consent agenda. So let me read that for you now. Item A is the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting held February 22nd, 2016. Item B is the approval of the special event permit for the Art at City Hall and Trunk and Treasure on Saturday, June 11th, 2016 from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Item C is the approval of the special event permit for the 2016 Rainbow Run on Sunday, June 5th, 2016, from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Item D is the approval of the special permit for the Cinco de Mayo's Fun Run on Sunday, May 5th, 2016. That's from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Item E is the approval of the special event permit for the 2016 Ferndale Pride on Saturday, June 4th, 2016, from 1 p.m. to 10 p.m. Item F is the approval of the special event permit for the Barbecue Rib Burnout number 9 on Saturday, May 14, 2016, from noon to 9 p.m. Item G is the approval of a special event permit for the Dress Like the Devil Run for the Angels on Saturday, April 30th, 2016. Item H is the approval to authorize the police department to purchase 4 in-car motor digital computers, software, accessories, and shipping from Dell for $9,086.12, and docking station, screen supports, and installation provided by Synergy Products for $3,452.80 for a total of $12,538.92 from the capital improvements account. Item I is the approval to backfill an inspector position to replace Jeffrey Williams, who resigned in February, and that's submitted by our Director of Human Resources. And finally, item J is the approval of the bills and payroll as submitted by the City Manager's Office, subject to review by the Council Finance Committee. What is Council's pleasure on the consent agenda this evening?
I move that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Support.
Moved by Martin and supported by Polika. Is there any discussion on the consent agenda?
Yes, Mayor.
Larry.
Cinco de Mayo's, it's Thursday, not Saturday.
Okay.
I just wanted to make that one.
So we'll make that change. Thank you.
The month and the day is correct, not the date. The day is not correct, but the month and the calendar is correct, but not the day.
Do you want to try that one more time?
No.
Well, considering it's your first mistake ever, Michael, we'll let you sign. Any other discussion from any members of the audience or council on the consent agenda? All right. Barb, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Leaks May?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Polika?
Yes.
Piana?
Yes.
Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you. The consent agenda is adopted. Moving on now to our regular agenda. Item A is the consideration of a public lodging house license for the Eightwood Hotel. And Dan Christ, are you going to introduce that item?
I'd be happy to, Your Honor.
Thank you.
As council knows, under Chapter 7 of the city's Code of Ordinances, there is a licensing provision with respect to public lodging houses. And in connection with an application, an applicant, upon submitting an application, has that application reviewed by the Chief of Police, and an investigation is conducted by the Chief of Police, as well as inspections by the Building Inspector and the Fire Marshal. Before you this evening is a report and recommendation from the Police Chief with respect to the investigation that he has undertaken, coupled with the reports that have been provided by the building official and fire marshal with respect to the property that is the Eightwood Motel on 8 Mile Road. So with that brief introduction, the chief has some items with respect to the matter that he'd like to present.
All right. Chief Collins.
Your Honor. As the city attorney stated, the application was made for a business license for the Eightwood Motel, which began the process for both this establishment and the Motorama. So we looked at the number of call runs. It was given over to the Detective Bureau to give me a summary of the significant runs there, the number of runs in total that were at the Eightwood Motel. In addition to the law enforcement runs that we have there, we also had an inspection on February 3rd where we had ourselves, the building department, and the fire department. Physically, I was there personally and to physically do an inspection of the facilities. As far as the law enforcement incidents that have occurred, we looked at the last 3 years. as a snapshot of what has been going on at the 8 Motel. Very similar, although less in number than the Motorama, but it is a smaller facility, it's about half the size. We ran into some of the significant events involved drug use, robberies, some levels of indications of prostitution. When I say that, we don't have any specific prostitution cases. However, we've had several cases of individuals that have reported that their cars were stolen by their girlfriend they have a first name for, they don't have any other information, things of that nature. These are all indications that this was a prostitution scenario that had gone bad, where John had been there and the woman had stolen either motor vehicles or money or things of that nature. We've had employees that have been assaulted by people in the room. We've had employees allegedly steal items from individuals that live in the room. We have, but the most significant event I'm sure you're all aware of, and that happened last summer, actually late last spring, where we had an individual, we had a dead body on Fielding show up. Now, it's been reported that this information was used both for the Motorama and this incident, but the individuals that sold the decedent the drugs actually lived, or were staying rather, at the 8 Motel. This began a multi-jurisdictional investigation both through the Detroit Police Department, the Ferndale Police Department, Oakland County Narcotics, and several federal agencies that resulted in a large-scale heroin and fentanyl investigation that centered from this death that occurred on Fielding Street. During that investigation, in the preliminary parts of that investigation, the Oakland County Narcotics team, 2 weeks after the decedent was found on Fielding Street, were surveilling the 8 Motel because they had been able to track down the individual responsible for the delivery of that fentanyl to the decedent. They were also able to identify the 3 individuals that that first person had purchased the fentanyl from. Those 3 individuals were still staying at the 8 Motel. The narcotics team ran surveillance on the 8 They were able to witness what they described as over 60 different transactions from these 3 individuals that were staying at the motel. These individuals were doing these narcotics transactions not only in the parking lot of the motel, but also on West Bennett Street to the rear of the location. Several arrests were made from those transactions of those individuals after they were witnessed purchasing the heroin and fentanyl, and then a search warrant was done at the room where they were staying, and all 3 of them were arrested for delivery of heroin. A significant amount of money was located there, as well as a significant amount of heroin and cocaine. We've also been able in the past to track down. We've had reported break-ins in the neighborhood. We were able to track down the individuals that committed those crimes to residents of the motel that occurred in 2014. And just significantly, as late as recent as the 11th of this month, we had a report of a robbery that occurred at the motel. Long story short, 2 individuals they were homeless individuals that were begging money. They had saved up enough money to get a room at the 8 They invited a third party to this room who showed up with alcohol and some prescription drugs. Throughout the night, one of the individuals that owned the prescription drugs had left to go buy some cocaine, was unsuccessful, came back, found that his prescription drugs were missing. A fight began. A man was threatened with a socket wrench. He left the room, went to the motel office, requested that the motel call the police department. He was according to him, was told that they had called the police, but the police never showed up. Ultimately, the other two left the room, confronted the man, and then left westbound on 8 Mile on foot. Finally, that gave the victim the opportunity to get back into his room, get to his cell phone, and he called 911. The police arrived within 2 minutes and arrested the individuals. We did the victim insists that he asked the people at the motel to call 911 for him. Our records indicate that we received one and only one phone call during that time period, and that was from the victim himself on his 911 on his cell phone. We received no other calls. That indicates to us that the motel was deficient in calling 911 and requested to do so upon report of an assault robbery. Those individuals were arrested ultimately and charged with assault.
And that happened on May 11th, Chief? I'm sorry. You said on May 11th of this month?
March 11th of this month.
I'm saying March.
Several days ago, yes, just recently. As I stated before, I was present for the inspections. We found, along with the building department, numerous code violations. I can speak to some of those. I can speak that we found marijuana in several of the rooms. I had communication with the on-site supervisor there. I kind of quizzed him as to whether or not what they did for when they smelled marijuana or had any indication of marijuana use sales or anything like that. I really got no answer other than it wasn't his business, and kind of surprisingly under the circumstances that not that they didn't want to participate, but they had no real policy of what they did or what they would do. They really kind of just had really didn't care that much, in my opinion, during that conversation. Also, we had noted that one of the rooms leads into like a outside court area that would be fenced in. It would be on the Bennett side of the rear side of the motel. That area was filled with building materials, mattresses that were covered with tarps, old vacuum cleaners, all sorts of motel-type debris that was, although neatly stacked, certainly was, I mean, it wasn't covered for the weather. There was indication of rodent infestation. There was generally dirty rooms, carpeting that had cigarette burns, things of that nature. Certainly it did not appear to be clean, and things of that nature. I was able to talk to several of the residents there. Several of them indicated to me that they had been living there for years, to the tune of 8 years, 5 years, different conversations so maybe a third of the motel was being utilized as an apartment building. Some of these apartments had cooking facilities, hot plates, crock pots, things of that nature. After reviewing all that information that was supplied to me, my personal observations, I had, in my personal opinion, when requested to make a recommendation for a licensing, my personal opinion, or my recommendation is that that license be denied.
All right, thank you. Do we need?
Well, Your Honor, I believe there is a representative from the applicant here, and there should be an opportunity, if counsel doesn't have any questions, to have the applicant address counsel should he
Sure,
wish.
no, that would be appropriate.
But if anyone has questions for the chief, it might be appropriate as well.
Well, don't go far.
I won't.
All right. But certainly would give the applicant an opportunity to address counsel this evening. Good evening.
Good evening. Thanks for letting me speak. My name is Rick Patterson. I'm here on behalf of the owner, Ken Patel. And Mr. Patel has owned the 8 Wood Motel for the last 20 years. And as required by the city ordinance, he's had his license renewed throughout that period of time. At no point prior to this year has there ever been an issue raised with regards to activities at the motel. There was an inspection on the 3rd. There was the Chief Collins' letter dated February 16th that were received by my client on the 19th. Since that time, we have been trying to be proactive rather than dwelling on the past and the prior incidents, address those prior incidents and come up with a solution so that they do not reoccur in the future. I would like to point out that this is a distinct entity from the Motorama. The number of incidents are much lower than the Motorama. Last year there were 17 calls, according to the chief's letter, 17 calls to this facility. But again, I don't want to dwell on that. I want to focus on going forward. The proposal that we have, or what we intend to do, if given the opportunity to do so, would be to implement new security measures to act as a deterrent to the activity that the chief was describing. Now, there's a multiple facets to what we intend to do. I'd like to briefly lay them out for the council. The first relates to security cameras, security footage. While there is some security coverage there now, the owner is willing to put in an entirely new system that provides complete coverage to the areas outside of the rooms. Obviously, we can't have the cameras inside the rooms. But the makeup of the property is such that there's a single point of entry. So a camera will be positioned so that everybody coming onto that property through that point of entry will be captured on video. There will be complete coverage throughout the property. There will be signs posted throughout the property letting people know that they're under video surveillance and that they're being watched. There'll be cameras inside the office as well, so that anybody that comes in to rent a room will have to present a valid ID, and they'll also be captured on the camera at that point in time. So there'll be a record of everybody that's renting a room. So people with an intention to do nefarious things will know that if they go to the 8 Wood Motel, their picture is going to be taken. The second aspect of it, controlling what happens on the property, would be to identify the parking spaces in the lot as an assigned to a specific room, so that the owner would be able to identify the cars that are in the lot and make sure that they are tied to a room that has been rented. If there will be visitor spots, but in order to be able to get a visitor spot, they'll have to go into the office again and register for that with a valid ID, so that there'll be a record of everybody that goes onto the property, everybody who drives onto the property, everybody who parks there. The last thing, and this relates to part of what the chief said, is with regards to activities that occur in the room that we have evidence of after the fact. The owners are willing to commit to training housekeeping as to identify drug paraphernalia, residue, whatever it might be, so that if it's identified, housekeeping can then go to the front desk and they can look up who rented that room and essentially create a blacklist or a list of people that will not be rented to again going forward. So we believe the combination of all of these things will achieve the goals of making the 8 Wood Motel a good partner in this business community. Well, we obviously can give no guarantees. Criminal activity by its very nature is unforeseeable, and the Michigan courts have held as much. But we are committed to doing whatever we can to address the concerns moving forward. And along those lines, again, I'd like to point out, we've been in business for 20 years. This issue was raised to us less than a month ago. To deny the license without an opportunity to address the concerns and to resolve them, I think is unfair. And that's why I'm here tonight on behalf of the owner to commit to you on his behalf, and he's here too, along with his sister who manages it and a contractor who they have engaged to address all of the issues raised by the city inspector. All the issues raised by the fire marshal have already been addressed. He's been in contact with a security company and has a quote for the security system I've discussed, neither of which it's not a cheap endeavor, but he's willing to commit to it to show the city that he wants to be a good partner moving forward. I appreciate the time. Thank you. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to try to respond to them.
Council have questions? Mr. Patterson.
I do have a question. What do we think that the timeline would be for all of these recommendations, security recommendations, et cetera, for this?
My understanding is that the repairs on the inspector's list will be completed within 3 weeks, I think it is.
Depending on occupancy and availability as the rooms come available, but there's about 3 weeks.
To address those concerns, this surveillance can, I believe, a month's time, it can be installed, and then the training of the housekeeping, I think that can occur within that same time frame. So we essentially need 30 days to get it up and running, and then moving forward, all those procedures will be in place to act as a deterrent to any of the activities that have been identified in the past.
I guess I have a question. Have you shared this plan previously before tonight with the chief or anyone at the city?
I have had brief conversations with the city attorney, but again,
Well,
I have not spoken with the chief. My involvement has come in as in later, so I've been trying to prepare, get everything in line, and come up with a game plan, make sure we were in a position to execute on the representations we were making. So I have not had an opportunity to discuss it with the chief yet.
Because I'm not a security expert, and we would rely on somebody like the police department to say, how do you think that would help to address the issues? So it's helpful that you're here, but working with our police department would be, a higher priority for us.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The part and parcel of all of this is to be a partner with the police and cooperate in any way they would want us to. They would have full access to any of the video that is taken on the property. If there's an issue that arises, if they become aware of something, we're more than happy to cooperate with them in any way we can. Again, the goal is, they've been a member of the business community for 20 years. The goal is to continue that in a positive way, and that's what we're hoping to accomplish.
Thank you.
Through the chair, if I may,
Yes.
the question. What previous actions has the owner taken to abate the crime issues as well as other maintenance issues? Just because we haven't cited them in a report before does not mean there was no knowledge that they were occurring. Or is that what you're inferring?
I'm not inferring that they weren't aware that they occurred, but whether the knowledge that they occurred and knowledge that they were perceived as being a nuisance by the chief of police that would result in withholding his license is a different thing.
So knowledge of them occurring, what actions have they previously taken before today to abate the issues?
I haven't discussed that issue with them. I've been focusing on forward, so I apologize. I don't know the answer to that question. My focus has been to resolve and move forward.
Thank you.
Huh? Well, I think that's his representative, so it's up to him. Dan Christ,
Yes, Your Honor.
is it time for us to deliberate, or is there any other evidence, or I don't want to call it evidence? This isn't a hearing, but
this isn't a hearing. This
isn't a hearing.
This is a presentation with respect
Yeah.
to the chief's report.
Yeah.
We've heard input from the representative. Council's prerogative now would be to consider a motion, and the motion could be to adopt the recommendation of the chief or not, or if council felt it needed more time to evaluate this circumstance, a alternative action would be to consider tabling it, should you think that's appropriate.
Thank you.
I apologize. May I?
Sure.
One other thought that I had is that perhaps rather than deny the license, to give us an opportunity, 120 days, 30 days to implement it, 90 days with it in practice, to demonstrate that we will address, that these issues are being addressed, so that moving forward, and if there's additional things that need to be done, we'll undertake to do those. But just to give us an opportunity to address them moving forward.
By any chance, is your client related to the owner of the Motorama? Same last name, right?
No.
No relation?
No relation.
one of the things he had indicated was that he had gone through training to run hotels. Does your
My client
have
does
similar
own
training?
a Hampton Inn. It's located in Florida, but he has been, obviously, he's been running this facility for 20 years. He does run other facilities in the hotel motel industry.
Right.
So, yes, he has been doing it for decades at multiple facilities.
Thank you. Thank you. Chief, I guess I have a question for you. In some ways, of course, I don't know what's been, why this plan wasn't proposed in the last 20 years, but it is more than was proposed by the owners of the Motorama. Does what was laid out to you this evening sound like it would be an effective deterrent to the kinds of activities that we see at this establishment?
Your Honor, the reason that I recommend the denial of the licenses for what has happened in the past, in my opinion, this is, my expertise is not in hotel management. It certainly is not in hotel security. If there is that type of expertise, then it was completely abandoned for this facility. Do I take a hit for not doing this in the last 5 years? Absolutely. I said that about the Motorama. Given the opportunity and the knowledge now that I have that is within my sphere of responsibility, that's why we see these two applications or these two licensings before us today. My personal opinion is that this has been a location that has taken an enormous amount of my officer's time. It has impacted on the neighborhood negatively. Putting up cameras would certainly be a positive step. Cameras are great for reactive policing, but what we have seen here is, in my opinion, a total lack of understanding of what has been going on, or at least a lack of care of what's been going on. Stepping forward now and going and addressing it now, certainly we could make it better, possibly, but that doesn't erase what has happened in the past, and past behavior is the best indicator of what will happen in the future. So my recommendation stands. I believe that what has gone on in that neighborhood, it's a disregard for the folks that live on Bennett Street and the other surrounding areas, and I have no qualms about making that recommendation and standing by it.
All right. Thank you. Other questions?
I'll make a motion.
Comments? Okay.
I make the motion to deny a license to the 8 Motel under Section 7-152A, finding the applicant is not a suitable person to conduct or maintain the business of running such establishment, and to provide written notice of the denial to the applicant.
Support.
Been moved by Polika and supported by Martin.
Through the chair, Councilman, did you read the recommended motion?
I think that the omitted part, and I would support an amendment, was the finding and substantial cause. I think that's important in the
Is that the language you're talking about, Dan? Finding substantial cause adopts the, is that the motion you read?
Well, I started with denying a license, but I can go back to, if I can restate it or amend it.
For the record, why don't you restate the motion?
Okay. Finding substantial cause, adopt the Ferndale Police Chief's recommendation denying a license to the 8 Motel under Section 7-152A, it finding the applicant is not a suitable person to conduct or maintain the business of running such an establishment, and to provide written notice of the denial to the applicant.
Support.
All right. Comments, questions of council?
I'll make, if I may, one comment.
Martin.
Or maybe more than one. I think, first off, I appreciate you coming here and presenting a plan and having put some thought into it. I think that's positive, and I do appreciate that, and I'm not discounting that. What I struggle with, and what drives my support of this motion and my vote tonight, and we've heard this from the last one we heard, is that somehow the fact that the city didn't catch it exonerates the owner from knowing it was going on before and acting. And to me, that reflects competency of management. Just because the city didn't issue a letter or the police chief didn't issue a letter doesn't clear the owner of knowing that there is a problem with criminal activity, that knowing there are problems with the property that are creating infestations, unsafe conditions, and just in general not a safe environment that would meet code. I view our responsibility as making sure that we create a safe environment to live, work, play, and do business in. Part of that is when we do act, we should do so definitively and be collaborative and cooperative. But when you look at years of whether we told you about it or not, knowing what's going on there, I struggle with that any future activity is not proactive, as council said, but is completely reactive, and I have no confidence of its ability to be executed. So I don't like to do this. I don't like it when we're in this situation. It's not a personal reflection of anyone involved, but for the, again, strength of the community, I support denying the license. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
If I'm the owner of a business and for years I experienced police coming to my business consistently for some serious issues, drugs, prostitution, assault, etc., at some point I have to say to myself, maybe what I'm doing isn't working. Maybe I need to do something different to create an environment that the police don't need to come several times a week. These issues are not unknown to the owner. Items identified through an inspection shouldn't have to come as a surprise. These are, issues that should have been addressed years ago without the city's involvement, just to be a good neighbor in the community. In my opinion, the owner of the property, through consistent neglect, has created and supported an environment for crime to flourish.
Your Honor?
I'm sorry, it's council's turn now, sir.
I'm just going to just mention that I think I would have liked to have heard that, yes, you've been in business for 20 years.
He's owned it for 20 years.
Okay. Yeah. That I would have liked to have heard some of the steps you've taken prior to now. I didn't hear that. And I can't believe that it wasn't noticed, some of the things that were going on in your establishment. So I think I just would have liked to have heard what steps you've taken, not the steps to come, but the steps you've taken up to this point today to correct this and maintain the safety of not only your patrons, but of the residents in this community.
Through the chair,
Sure.
I concur with the same sentiments, and I think that the owner needs to prove in some way, if we were to continue the license, that this would be an ongoing maintenance for the hotel. And to me, it's just another item for the city to manage, right? Whereas we just don't want to be part of managing a city's or a business's operation, and that shouldn't be our responsibility. And so, while I also appreciate Councilman Martin's comments on that this is not a position we like to be in, and we don't like making these types of decisions that impact an owner, but we have been very concerned about the care and compassion response for the people who are staying there, but also for the surrounding neighborhood. And so in that vein, I'm supportive of denying their license at this time.
Any last comments or questions before I call the roll? Barb, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Martin?
Yes.
Polika?
Yes.
Piana?
Yes.
Leaks May?
Yes.
Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you. That license is denied. Moving on to the next regular agenda item is item B, consideration of an amendment to Chapter 7 Business regulations and licenses generally, Article 20, medical marijuana facility and medical marijuana grow operation, Section 7 through 145, conditions necessary. And Councilman Martin is going to introduce this item.
Yeah, I asked for this to be added for a number of different reasons. And the biggest reason I want to speak to is I don't want anybody to think this is about medical marijuana. What this ordinance does is requires medical marijuana operations to provide literature for treatment for addiction in a common area that's available to patients. And this is not, again, about medical marijuana. I'm a supporter of medical marijuana, but it is about addiction. And addiction is a disease that impacts people emotionally, psychologically, and physically. And it's less to do with the substance, but the patient of that addiction who gets to the point when they're finally ready to reach out for help, many times, whether it be they just don't know or they're in too clouded a mental ability to even know where to look for help for. We do it with opiates that get prescribed. We do it with alcohol. We do it for gambling. We do it for any number of other products that are legal but potentially could be abused by someone with the disease of addiction. And to me, the medical marijuana facilities falls into that as well. Medical marijuana does good for a lot of people, I believe, but if you have the disease of addiction, it doesn't matter if it does you good or not, you will continue to fall and spiral into that trap. And so even if by placing these brochures and this literature, this contact information helps save one person from addiction, to me it's completely worth it. It's a very low cost requirement. I'm not asking the facilities to push it on people, but just so it's visibly available for them. So if a patient is at that point that they look to seek recovery, they've got a real responsible and effective way to start that engagement for themselves, to start that recovery process. So this was not in our original medical marijuana ordinance. This amends the ordinance to require these facilities to carry that information for those individuals that may want to avail themselves for it. So I respectfully ask for council's support to the change to the ordinance. And I can take questions or just make the motion?
I concur completely with you.
Start with the motion, because then we can have discussion.
I would move that we adopt Ordinance 1180, amending Chapter 7, Business Regulation and Licenses, generally Article XX, Medical Marijuana Facilities and Medical Marijuana Grow Operations, Section 7-145, conditions necessary, adding subsection 8 that requires notice of the risks associated with developing addiction and contact information for local and statewide resources for addiction problems or concerns.
Support.
Moved by Martin, supported by Polika. Okay, now, comments, questions of Dan, Dov. Ready?
I don't have any. You've already stated it.
You stated it very well. I think you're absolutely right. If one person benefits, it's worthwhile. I guess the only question I had was, what information exactly will they give out? Is there a standard brochure? We leave that up to them?
Well, there's, through the chair.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, the ordinance requires very specific information that's provided through a, and correct me if I'm wrong, state regulatory agency or a local agency or an accredited program or facility. And generally, it's just the contact information that's visible, readily available, that the patient can pick up while they're in the lobby or in the waiting room to take with them. How they go from there, many of these are referral services that will put them into a program, whether it be inpatient or outpatient, that's appropriate for the level of the disease that the patient may have at that point.
But these brochures exist. I mean,
Correct.
these folks don't have to create something.
There are posters.
Well, there's,
sorry.
through the chair, there's an alternative in the ordinance for them to utilize the state resource or refer them to a local provider of addiction counseling services. It's really the applicant's or the licensee's election as to which methodology he wishes to provide, he or she, to his qualified patients.
Thank you. Yep, thanks. Well, I wholeheartedly support it.
Great, thank you.
All right. If there's no other questions or comments, Barb, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Piana?
Yes.
Leaks May?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Polika?
Yes.
Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you. That item is adopted. Moving on to regular agenda item C is a consideration of the fee schedule for the residential parking zone and residence permit-only parking program for the fiscal year of 2017. Joe Gauschow, Assistant City Manager, is here to introduce that item.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. In December, City Council approved a significant comprehensive overhaul of the pilot RPZ program from 2012 that would see it reformatted and restructured and expanded ultimately to 4 areas around the downtown. And I did say at that time that I would come back in March after we took some time in the winter and began to build out what we would project the budget to be. And I will come back in March with the preliminary fee schedule for the first year of the program. I am happy to report at the outset that we are on schedule still to meet our expectation of delivering this program in April and May. We have most of the signage and the communications close to being completed, and we expect to go out to residents in these zones and communicate to them the new procedures and the updates about the parking program. And the method of communication will be door-to-door because these are finite streets and we know exactly who we're going to be contacting. So that being said, before we go towards door, I wanted to set an expectation and give council the recommendation to consider the proposed fee schedule for the first year. In that this is a new program and a comprehensive overall program, we wanted to focus on what new resources we'd have to introduce to make this effective. So we have approved additional staffing from Republic Parking. They have brought on another enforcement officer to meet the expectation of the residents. We expect to launch a online website. I guess a website wouldn't be offline. We expect to launch a website dedicated to just parking information and resources. The domain hasn't been clearly established yet, but we feel we're within about 8 to 10 weeks of launching that website. That website will allow permitters, the RPZ and other permit programs to purchase parking permits securely online, and we will be working on the mechanics of that over the next couple of weeks as well. The other key expense as noted in the recommendation is the vehicle costs to actually go around and drive through the neighborhoods while ensuring that we also adequately maintain the enforcement of the downtown system in addition to the streets. And the administrative costs, that's just the communications portion of it, the graphic design, the printing costs, the layout costs, the rollout costs, and then the customer service portion as well. So I summarized kind of how we would distribute those costs for the first year in the council packet. And I am open to any questions council might have about this first year fee schedule.
So through the chair, if I may, the personnel costs is an incremental increase of existing personnel costs. The $25,662.
That was a cost of an additional parking enforcement officer that we hired to ensure.
We're bringing on additional.
Yes, that's an additional position.
Okay.
Okay.
The position that we thought would be needed because the expectation for enforcement is greater in the residential streets than it is in the lots. Clearly, I'm sure some people are averse to us enforcing in the lots, but the expectation definitely from the residents, we want to set the expectation that we are enforcing these time restrictions. This does mean something, and we do expect to provide this parking space for our residents.
All right, thank you.
And it does, you noted here there's a cost for license plate recognition software. This person can't see a permit hanging from the rearview mirror or something? I mean, explain a little bit about why
Sure.
that is necessary.
Well, the RPZ works using time restrictions to enforce the movement of vehicles. So if you park beyond a 2-hour time restriction, you would be subject to citation, which is by ordinance a $35 prohibited parking ticket. So what a license plate recognition does is you drive by parked vehicles and it timestamps them as you drive by, so you know when you circle back if that vehicle is moved or not, an inch. The traditional methodology would be for the RPZ vehicle to get out of the street, go chalk tires, and note the position of the vehicle and look for whether it has a permit or it doesn't have a permit. If it doesn't have a permit, they would note the information about the vehicle, chalk the tires, and then come back.
Through the chair, I have a follow-up question. Is this license plate recognition software deployable for the entire Park Mobile system, or is this specifically for RPZ?
Well, we haven't gone out to bid on it. If we would do this, it's a recommended investment in the budget for FYE 17, post July 1. But we have built out we've done a little bit of research on the outset, and it would be useful for enforcement of the entire system, including the streets. So yes, it does. I'm sorry. Long story short, yes.
Okay, I just wanted to let council be aware that the city of Detroit chose license plate recognition software for their Park Detroit system. They went and bypassed Park Mobile because it was spot specific, and so they went with the license plate recognition. So I think this is the trend towards downtown parking models, I think.
A lot of city parking systems are investing in LPR just the efficiency is very, very, very significant.
I have a follow-up to Mel's follow-up. Sure. So we have not gone out for bid for the software yet?
No, this is just part of the initial budget again. So we have the bid document generally built out. We are looking to get through this budget season rolling out the program. As I said, and I'm sorry, I neglected to remind this in my introduction too, but we did recommend to council that when we do roll this out in April and May, that there won't be any fee because we're going to be experiencing a lot of growing pains probably in the first 6 months as we enforce this new program. So with that being said, we did include this budget item for the fiscal year end 17 budget, which would be after July 1. So we would still intend to roll out with the LPR. We have the research done. We have the bid document ready to go out, but we would probably publish that bid in May.
Well, that's a nice segue now that you mentioned fees.
Wait, may I have one follow-up question before you jump into fees? Just so I have an understanding. So this license plate recognition software, is this a short-term gap of software, and that if we rebid it, we'll get a different type of software? Or so I'm not a software guru here, but so are we purchasing license plate recognition software from company A, but when we rebid it, we might purchase another software package from company B?
No, it would just be one bid for more or less proprietary software from one solution, one company. So you're buying the camera, you're buying the software solution, you're buying the installation package, the storage, which would be the NVR. You'd be storing all that video that you're taking from all those parked cars for X amount of days.
Am I asking that question right?
We don't have it currently.
I know, but you're purchasing it for this program, but then you're going to go out and rebid it.
No.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. No,
Whole system.
We're going to be delaying the bid till after July 1. But we've researched the criteria and the components of what would go into that bid for an LPR system, but we don't have one existing, and we'll only be going to bid once, and that'll be after July.
For the whole system, all in one.
Yep.
If I may, Council, through the chair, we won't have it till July. This is just a fee schedule.
Oh,
it's not
okay.
a budget item.
Okay.
And so we were approving.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
This is the justification for the fee schedule they're proposing.
Thank you. I get it.
No,
now.
I was following you. I got it.
I'm like,
Sorry if I wasn't clear on that.
thank you for explaining it. I've had too much sugar today, I think.
So until, if I may.
Now,
Okay. So if well, I need to continue on with her train of thought.
All right.
So until July, until we get the software, we are going to end up just chalking tires and marking time.
Yeah.
Through the pilot program.
Yeah, I'll defer to Republic Parking's internal procedures for them, but yeah, I think that's the methodology that you would use. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now on to the fees. There are approximately 300, not approximately, there's an exact number you gave us in here.
352.
380
80.
homes that are impacted for this zone, and your intentions are to charge $15 for each home.
Yeah, you could consider $15 per household if you decide to pursue the RPZ.
Which is about $5,700, which in this whole project is very, not very substantial. But symbolically, to me, I have an issue with the fee because this isn't a resident's problem. To me, the city has kicked this tire down the road for many, many years. It's our You know, for years, it's been our responsibility and our fault that we've created this parking problem by not creating a parking solution. And now we're charging the residents within this zone to help solve this problem. And I don't think it's fair to those select individuals to have to pay for our problem.
If I may, through the chair, I think until we have a motion, we limit it to questions, and then we all have statements to make about it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we had a motion.
We do not, we do
so
not
sorry.
have a motion. But his comment does raise a question, which is the actual percentage of the total project cost that the $15 fee would capture. It's not 50%, right?
No, it's much less. So this is kind of a starting point, again, because we're focusing on this being a new rollout to a new program. So what we wanted to do is start with a very low percentage. So the cities we're projecting to subsidize total costs would be 88% if you took these expenses into consideration, and the residents would absorb about 12% of the system's costs, which ends up being about $15 for 4 passes at $3.75 per pass. So we wanted to start somewhere because we don't have a lot of real data and real understanding about how the program is going to work, but also with the understanding that this program is likely to be popular and has a potential for expansion. So there is a petition process for other additional residential streets to petition for this. So when we think about the fee schedule, we were considering about potential for expansion and not just the 4 streets. This could end up being 8 streets in the future, who knows. But we started with that in mind.
Joe, at least one other community close to us, Royal Oak, has a residential permit process. Do you know what the fee they charge?
Yeah, certainly. We reached out to their office and they charge $25 per household.
$25.
And they issue them over 2-year periods. Is that correct? Yeah. So they don't renew them once a year, they renew them biannually. So it's $50.
So it's $50 for 2 years?
Correct, yeah.
Are there any other communities around here? I'm not aware of any other communities.
There aren't actually a lot of RPZ programs that are around here. The city of Ann Arbor does have one. They're definitely an apples to oranges. They're not an apple like us. But they're $50 per vehicle. So.
Well, I appreciate you explaining the wage cost, because I thought that was baked into what we currently had, and that
I did too.
Gave me pause. But if we're actually incurring an additional body, it does have to be paid for. Yeah, I'm sorry. Question.
Yeah, I have a question. The recommendations that have come to council had a lot of input and guidance from a residential committee. Can you give some insight as to why they approved a $15 fee or agreed to that?
The committee, we worked with them, and we had part of identifying policy options for them included talking to staff about realistically what we could offer, what we could pay for, and what kind of program boundaries we could set, and that creating a new program does create new costs. Does incur new costs to meet those expectations. So it was really just sitting down with the group and talking it over, and we kind of explained and identified what kind of costs go into really enforcing this and truly putting some meat behind it. And over a period of several meetings over the summer, I think they just understood the perspective.
Right, and the feedback from the residents in the survey were mostly neutral or positive about paying a fee for the permits?
I'd say neutral to indifferent.
Neutral to indifferent.
I think there's more interest in the actual mechanics of the program in the survey.
Well, it seems to me that when we tried other things, one of the criticisms was, well, if you're not going to enforce it, then what's the difference? So the enforcement mechanism of whatever type, if I recall correctly, was important to the residents. I heard from people that said it doesn't matter what rules you do. If you don't have folks out there that are going to enforce it, people will do whatever they want. So maybe that was...
Yeah, that was consistent. It was through the surveys as well. They did comments. We had a comment section, open comment section, in several different ways say, well, if you don't put anyone out there, then it's just a sign.
Yeah.
And that's some consistent feedback that we received, which is true.
Mm-hmm. So other questions of fact for Joe or a motion?
We have a resident.
Or yes, if anyone from the audience would like to address us on this issue, please But come on up, Sharon, because folks at home need to hear you in the microphone. Yes. Thanks, Greg.
So these 382 residents are expected to, households, okay, are expected to pay that fee. When we finally do establish parking, you know, that has to come, will we rescind that cost to those properties and perhaps even reimburse those residents for that support? Or will they continually be charged for that even after we resolve our parking issues with deck parking or whatever it is, you know, comes to pass?
That brings up a good point too, and I think that gets at a bigger, more comprehensive item of performance measurement. So if you build a deck, do you keep the program? And so part of this program is also making sure we do biannual surveys, especially before we begin surveying residents about the impact of the program before and after we actually implement it and enforce it. So while a parking deck would provide more capacity downtown, streets are still free. So I do believe that there's still potential for the problem to exist beyond a deck, creating additional capacity. But then again, if we were to survey those residents after a deck was constructed and there wasn't any value to that, then we certainly wouldn't continue the program. In terms of just the general fee, why we would recommend this, it's just a new program, and we typically approach new programs that are introduced for a specific user group using user fee model, and that's just the general approach we took. This is a benefit that is provided to these 4 streets, not citywide, so we identified the audience who benefits from the program, we identified the mechanics of the program, and then we just identified the true cost of providing that program for these people.
Is there any, and it's a good point, is there anyone else from the audience that wants to address council on this issue? Please do. Yes, thanks.
I just had a question.
Sure.
So is there any...
And give us your name.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Travis, 378 Channing Street. It was $15 for each household, and then what was the fee for if a violation, a citation?
Prohibited parking by ordinance is a $35 fee. So if you parked your car in the RPZ beyond the 2-hour time restriction, if you went downtown Friday night for 4 hours and you weren't a resident, it would be a $35 prohibited.
Okay. And is there any data or projected data based on any other communities that have done this in the past of what kind of incremental costs you would have to offset, say making that $15 to each household go away, what the citation would have to increase to offset that cost so that the budgeting all works out? Right. Is that something that has been researched, and if so, what kind of data is there to, kind of show that?
Sure. That's each parking system is a little bit different. That would depend on how the city enforced it, how well they enforced it. You can have an active enforcement, a proactive enforcement, which is what we're recommending. You can have a call and response enforcement where you do just have posted signs, and if a resident calls and says, I have a unpermitted vehicle parked in front of my house, we would go out and enforce that. So there's that issue. And you had a preliminary point that I wanted to touch on, and I actually can't recall it. Could you restate?
Yeah.
It was data.
Yeah, so it's just I guess the theme of my concern is that each household is just being nickel and dime for whatever it may be, and I would like to see, I guess, not just one proposal of, okay, let's bill each household this and let's do a citation for this. Obviously there's going to be some concern for the residents of having to pay this fee. So putting forth 2 options of, say, entirely budgeting this through a citation-based payment, or splitting it off like we're currently doing with the $15 household fee, I feel that it is necessary to explore both of those options before and seeing how those lay out, because obviously we don't want to be charging $150 for a parking ticket, but if it's just $5 more, a $40 parking ticket, that's to offset a $15 cost that we don't have to charge households, I feel like that would be something worth looking into. That is the premise of my question.
And that just triggered it. So, and that gets back to the citations. Would you expect some citations to occur from enforcement? Absolutely at the outset. One thing that we did recognize that citations can be considered variable revenues, meaning that behavior changes as enforcement is successful. So the more that we are out there and the more that we're circling it, we suspect the more we will be moving traffic, so you can't rely on that. We would consider that a variable revenue. In the long term, again, thinking about this in the long term.
If I may, through the chair, so your cost model here, and excellent question, sir, thank you. So your cost model here is exclusive of any revenue through citations, correct? So there's no accounting variable or fixed for any revenue from citations against the cost of this program?
That's correct. These are just program-based fees.
Okay, thank you.
That is a really intriguing idea, and I think it's something that we should track to see what the increase in tickets is. The potential danger is that if you create programs that require ticket revenue, that if that revenue goes down, you sort of incentivize or force your officers to be more aggressive than you want them to be to promote programs. I'm not saying you can't get around that, but that's always the danger in doing something like that. But it's an intriguing idea, and I think something that we could certainly track to at least to see how much of the rest of that percentage that we're not capturing we could capture that way.
That's a great point.
Well, I guess my question would be, is there then the opportunity for us to not charge, like agree to these fees, but not charge the first year, wait until September, because I think you want to charge every September, right? Starting in September.
The proposal was that the season would be September 1st through August 30th. So you would renew for September 1st. That would be your new year.
So is there a possibility of saying we're not going to charge fees until September of 2017? That gives us well over a year to identify what income we have coming in compared to our costs for the program.
If I may, do you think that it would be, I'm phrasing this in the form of a question, do you think that it would be needlessly confusing or inflammatory to the residents to say there is a fee, but we're just going to wait another year before we charge it, versus not considering the fee schedule at all right now and picking it up again for September 2017?
I think there's some issues with doing that, and one of the whole reasons we're doing this, we're calling this a pilot program, the RPZ. We did some pilots 2 years ago of just testing it out, and now we're advancing and evolving this program. And to me, I feel that the subsidy that the city's providing is pretty significant on behalf of administering this program. But overall, I think, part of the cost of this program is figuring out the online permitting and the online payments and secure transactions, and that's part of the beta of figuring out how well we can do this. And I actually think this program is going to grow.
I'd like to respond to that. I want to wait until we have a motion so I can make a comment.
Oh, okay. I guess we are debating.
Yeah. Since I brought it up earlier, I feel like I have to be a stickler to it now.
All right. I move to approve the fee schedule for the residential parking zone and resident permit-only parking program for fiscal year 2017.
All right. Moved by Piana. Is there support?
I'm sorry. What was the motion?
To approve the fee schedule for the residential parking zone and resident permit-only parking program for fiscal year 2017.
All right, I'll support that.
Moved by Piana and supported by Lee May. All right. Now we can have discussion and comments and opinions.
If I may, to Councilwoman Piana's point, I think in normal pilot programs, that's okay. And Councilman Pollock alluded to this earlier. This is not a luxury. This is not something that these residents are asking for as a benefit, as it was described. This is a necessity because of what, I'm sorry, we own this. We have done by having inadequate parking solutions downtown and continuing to approve ever expansive festivals, and other special events, which I love and wouldn't trade for the world. But the resulting fact of this is that it's created an untenable situation for these residents where you can't even park on your own street during this. And I strongly object. I love the program. I think you in the work that the citizens group did is fantastic. And I think this program is another, as the mayor referenced in a previous meeting, a plank in what is a board of solutions or temporary solutions to help address the parking issues that we've got. But I really do believe that in our effort to bring people to Ferndale and promote economic, transactions, the fallout to that is that it has become untenable for some of these neighborhoods around the downtown area. And I struggle with having to charge the residents as a result of that. If this were a luxury item, like when the decks are built or whatever the solution is, when we've adequately addressed the downtown parking issue, then yes, by all means, let's discuss fee schedules. Because at that point, it is more of a benefit or luxury. But this is just a pure necessity of enjoying your property, even though it's a city street. I get that. But I think it's a hassle enough. We're asking them to get permits and track the permits and tag them and what have you. To add even a nickel and dime, monetary fee is I feel it's almost insulting at this stage. Later, again, it makes sense to me. This is a great program. I think it's going to grow too. And I'd feel a little differently about it if it wasn't a neighborhood directly downtown. So I won't support the fee schedule. I strongly support the program. I strongly think you guys did a great job with this to get it moving forward. There's no way at this point I'm going to support charging residents. And please don't take that as a reflection of the work you guys did. This is way better than the first time we tried it. And I just think, considering where the city spends money in other places, there's no way I could justify that here.
If I may.
Yes.
Is it possible, I don't know how many people took the survey or what reflection it is or what's the, what am I trying to say?
I don't know.
You can help me with this. I don't know how many people took the survey.
We had it was fantastic response rate. We had about 41%.
41%.
Which is way higher than a typical city survey.
Okay. Now, my question is, has the possibility been considered of just having residents that want to do this, the ones that are most affected by it, to say, hey, I'll participate in this fee and do this?
Yeah, it's not compulsory. If you don't have multiple vehicles and you have a driveway, you don't have to get an RPZ pass if you don't need one. It's just for those who do live on these streets, who may have 3 or 4 vehicles in one single-family home and one driveway, and they play the jockey game every morning. It's for them. So
particularly, if I may, on the east side, on East Breckenridge and in that area, there are not that many driveways. The residents park on the street in front of their house. And depending upon the situation, the alley behind some of these houses is not passable or realistic for parking.
So would those be people that would want to participate in? Well, probably. But are there people that say, what street am I thinking of? I'll just think of the Fly Vester, which tends to be quite congested. Mm-hmm. What I'm just asking is that if it's a problem with charging residents, could there be some sort of program or pilot that the residents that want to pay this fee, then this will be enforced in front of their residences, is what I'm asking.
We have to enforce by the street. So yeah, it couldn't be broken down in that way. So if once a street is incorporated, every household on that street is part of that enforcement district. But that's all. You do bring up a great reminding point that Vester, we did acknowledge in building this program, had a lot of public safety issues. We got a lot of those concerns expressed via the surveys. So we are doing a permit-only parking for Vester in East Breckenridge and the Northeast District, we're calling it. So residents who are enrolled in that program called RPOP, Resident Permit Only Parking, So between 4 p.m. and midnight, it would be permit-only parking. If you didn't have a permit, you couldn't be on that street, period. Whereas if you're in an RPZ district, that's 2-hour time restriction parking, and you can park up to 2 hours on that street.
Can you tell me what the RPZ district is, that district is again, the streets that would be affected by this?
Sure. It's West Troy, West Saratoga. You're testing my memory. East Troy, East Breckenridge between Bermuda and Woodward, and I think I got them. I think that's it. And then we have RPOP. I can also encourage residents to go to the December 14th agenda minutes. You can see the entire packet with the map. And we will have this information again released once we launch the new parking website.
So whether we charge residents a permit fee or not, there's going to be costs to this program that are going to be borne by somebody. And I guess I assumed then that if we didn't do a permit fee, those costs would be borne by the parking fund?
Yeah, the auto parking fund will still be the central house for all these expenses and costs. The costs will just be borne by users of the parking, whoever uses the parking system in general.
As well as the revenues from any citations issued.
Yes, yeah, correct, yeah.
Right.
But yeah, again, that's another fair point, just to make sure that this program is confined to the auto parking fund, not the general fund.
Right. Certainly it's not paid for by the general fund.
Well, through the chair, I appreciate Councilman Martin's comments, but I have a different philosophical view about our parking problem in the downtown. What I've heard tonight was that the city created this parking problem, and as if somehow we haven't been trying to address this through multiple strategies and tactics over the years. And I feel like part of our parking problem is related to growth of our community and our downtown and a demand to be here. And, you know, we're going to be adding parking capacity through a deck, which may or may not be near the streets that have an RPZ zone. So, and since we know that we have an issue with people coming to visit Ferndale who park but don't want to walk, this may or may not be a resolution for them if they don't live near a parking deck. And so I kind of concur with the statements of our assistant city manager, who says adding a new deck in the downtown isn't going to reduce the demand for free parking on the streets next to residents who live near the businesses. So I think this is only going to be a continuous issue that we're going to have to address, which we're going to be launching the RPZ in order to do that, because our downtown is growing. Will continue to grow. We have new residents coming and new developments. And so, you know, I sort of take issue that we've created this problem and haven't found a solution. I think that's sort of an unfair statement to make. So,
if I may, through the chair, I very specifically said this is one piece of a lot of things that we've done. I know we've done things through the years. There's no question, and I've been a part of that as well, and believe very strongly in the work that we've done. I've never inferred or insinuated or wanted to that we've been sitting on our new chairs not doing anything about this, because I firmly believe we have, and this is a piece of all of that effort. But yet, I will stand by the statement that says, to a degree, we have created this because we've been talking about parking for years. We continue to move forward on that, but yet the fallout from the popularity of Ferndale, which again I also said I wouldn't trade for the world, has impacted these residents more heavily than others. And when we do have decks and it's about paid parkings, I am more than willing to talk about a fee schedule. And I believe that that's the appropriate time to do that. Right now, we're looking at another summer of people driving on sidewalks and police calls to these areas. I'm not willing to entertain a fee schedule. Talk to me when we have alternatives.
Driving on sidewalks?
Yes. I called the police twice myself last year because of it.
I do.
Yeah. It's very dangerous during the summer.
You mentioned something, Councilman Martin, that we've done we've tried other measures before. What have we tried before we got to this point? I would like to know what we've tried. And
We have a very aggressive alternative transportation plan, multimodal plan, that hopefully long-term will alleviate the parking situation, as well as looking at the first iteration of the residential parking program, where we gave that a try. We've had a lot of healthy discussion about concentric parking.
And I think that's what you're referring to. We did a specific residential parking program, sort of a pilot, right?
Okay.
And which Councilman Martin did sort of take the lead on very specifically. It was mixed results.
We put in a new parking, it did very mixed results. We put in a new parking system that has great data compared to what we were getting, to be able to further analyze and address the problems. Every step of the way, we've done things, but I don't think anybody can confidently say the issues are solved or completely or adequately addressed. And until we've got more options out there, and this is just my own personal belief, I struggle with, as low as a cost as $15 is, it may not be low for everybody. I struggle with the idea of charging residents for this. Again, talk to me when we've got either a deck or whatever that solution looks like built, because then I think it's less of a necessity. But, you know, witnessing what I've witnessed, just visiting friends or what have you on the east side, it's crazy and it's dangerous. To me, this is not a necessity. This is another piece of what we've done and worked on to build a solution to get us there. And I wouldn't, again, trade the popularity of the downtown, especially in the summer, for anything. That's why I live here in good part, because I love that atmosphere and I love that scene, and I want our city to do this. I think the burden weighs disproportionately on some of the residents based on location, their ability to have a driveway. You know, these are old houses on small lots that were never built with this kind of activity. These neighborhoods were never built with this kind of activity envisioned.
I see. Lloyd, huge orange pylons that say no parking for everybody. How about it?
I think if jetpacks would have just been invented, we don't even need to talk about it.
Well, it also gets to the larger issue of the parking fee schedule in our regular lots, which we have not addressed. And as we adjust those hours and those fees, there is the ability to adjust them to cover these costs as well, because if we're going to do a deck, that's also coming out of this auto parking fund, and we have to be very cognizant of the fact that the auto parking fund can't pay for everything, but that is another opportunity to look at those.
So I have to say that if we didn't have the auto parking fund, I think I'd have a different conversation, because I wouldn't expect the rest of the community to pay for these passes as though it was coming out of the general fund. It is coming out of the fund used to help us solve parking issues. And this is another parking issue that we're trying to solve.
Yeah, so for me, I'm willing to say, for the first year, why don't we analyze the costs? Why don't we analyze the potential increased revenue from tickets? Why don't we see what we're going to do about a deck? Why don't we see what we're going to do about expanding the hours and possibly adjusting the fees of our other parking? All the while getting the bugs out of this system and running it for a year. So I'm comfortable not charging residents for the first year, but I think we have to be careful how we communicate that this isn't going to be a forever free program. I think we have to let folks know that you know, this is a pilot program that we're testing, and we want their feedback, and we want to know if they value it. Sometimes the benefit of a small fee tells you if somebody really values it or not, because if they're not willing to invest $15 in something, then they really didn't want it all that bad after all. So I'm willing to sort of pilot this for a year without a fee. I guess that's, you know, hearing from what you all are saying, I guess I would certainly be willing to do that.
So I guess then I would ask the city manager to queue this discussion back up next September.
Can do that. Well, I would like to follow up on a question you had with timing, because I'm supportive of this, because we said it was a pilot.
Yep.
I do think this program will grow, and to keep subsidizing this program I don't think is in the best interest of the city and or the health of this program. But Dan indicated, or sorry, Councilman Martin indicated that he wouldn't be willing to change the fees until we had a parking deck, but I doubt we'll have a parking deck built and ready to go and operational by September. So can you talk a little bit about your willingness to?
I will come part of the way if we are very clear that we will pick this up again a year from the September start date, not a year from today.
Okay.
So a year from when we said we would start collecting, we'll proceed as normal. We'll pay for it, and then we'll have the discussion again late next year, when we're in the fall of next year, when we can further assess if we really did have an impact or not. I'll come that far over. My initial statement holds true where I believe, but to get this done, I believe I'll come part of the way.
Okay. Very
Sausage
supportive
being
of
made here, yeah.
Yeah.
That's how it works. All right, and that's amenable to you. I know we have a motion and a support, but.
I think we have to vote down the first motion and then propose the second one. Sorry, I don't mean to do that.
It can't simply be withdrawn, that's what I was going to say, is the alternative
if the
is Nathan could
seconder-
withdraw it if they wanted to. I think it could be either way, or we could just vote. What?
Who seconded the motion?
I can amend it.
Or she could.
Well,
Or-
if that, I suppose if that gets seconded, you could amend it. But right now, there's a motion on the table. The
There's a motion on the
easiest would be to vote that motion down if there's.
Or
Do
withdraw.
a new one?
Yes.
Or withdraw it, or no, that's not.
Well, it would have to be seconded. The preferable rules of Robert rules would be to vote the motion down.
This is voted down. It'll be icing on the cake for me, okay? And then we can.
I'll withdraw my motion. Is that what you're saying? No.
We'll just.
Call the question.
Yes.
All right.
Wait.
Rarely all say no, so.
You ready?
Yeah, I know.
Right, that's what I'm saying, it's an odd motion that, well, and I would argue that in Robert's Rules of Order, the maker of a motion can't vote no. That's my understanding, and so that's why I think if there's option is available to her to withdraw her motion, and I'm hearing you say that's okay but not preferable, but if it's okay, I think that's what it gets around. It's my understanding of Robert's Rules is that the maker of a motion has to support their own motion.
That's a stupid rule.
Talk to Robert. Now, you may
No, I'm not blaming you. I believe you.
Robert's of Robert's rules. So, and Dan, you may disagree with me about that, but that's always been my understanding, that the person who supports it doesn't have to. That's why you often hear support for discussion. But if there isn't
Mayor,
one
I'll
person
bring
that's
you-
willing to vote yes,
Yeah.
then I think under Robert's rules, then we wouldn't have had a motion in the first place. That's my understanding. You can check on that.
I will.
Okay. So I think you have the option of withdrawing your motion if you like. Or
I
you can vote
propose
on it.
withdrawing my motion.
All right, and does
I'll support.
and does the second person, all right, so the motion has been withdrawn. So now the chair would entertain a new motion. Which we haven't.
Well, I'll move that we not charge for the residential parking program for a period not to exceed 1 year from the September start date, with the intention of picking the discussion back up again in the fall. I don't even know if that's a legal motion. Is that all right?
Support?
Really is how sausage gets made. It's not always neat and clean, but I think I understand, if I understand the gist of your.
Barbara, do you understand that motion?
I'm going to have to go back and listen to that again.
You got it.
Okay.
Yeah,
You
we'll
got
be
it?
fine.
You've got it on tape, all right. Yes.
And we will put on the.
Yes, but now that there's a motion by Councilman Martin and supported by Councilman Pollock, I just want to say, as I understand it, what we're saying is we're not going to institute a fee for this year and we will revisit it in time for the September 1st, 2017 fee year.
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Better said than I did.
Yeah. All right. Is there any discussion, questions, comments on that motion? All right, Barb, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Martin.
Yes.
Pollica.
Yes.
Piana.
Yes.
Leaks May.
Yes.
And Mayor Coulter.
Yes, thank you. That motion is adopted. Moving on now to our final regular agenda item, that would be item the Woodward Corridor Neighborhood Bicycle Network bid update. And we've got a presentation, I do believe. Justin has a presentation on this item.
Oh, for goodness sakes. sure it's not in color.
It's not in color.
I think he's providing copies just in case you didn't have it.
No, this is the same thing we got.
Yeah, just in case you didn't have a printed copy. But
Thank you, Justin.
Yep.
All right.
So good evening, and this project took two Justins. So I have Justin Wellman here from Gibbles Webster to also answer any questions, but just wanted to give an update on the project, and I'll give you a little bit of backstory. So initially let's see here. So initially, we started this process last April when we applied for a TAP grant, a Transportation Alternatives Program grant through SEMCOG and MDOT. They receive federal funds and administer them through this process. So we applied last spring and presented to you at that time just to let you know the project was happening. We were awarded in July. So Derek and I were here again in September just to give you an update on the process, and then in December we moved forward with your approval on an interlocal agreement. So with this project, as you're probably well aware, there's 5 other communities involved. We had a joint application for a bike route. Essentially, this project came from conversations we had with other communities, looking at what they were doing as well, but primarily driven by the plans that are in our adopted Ferndale Moves multimodal plan. So this bike route was, and all of the elements with it were originally with that, and we saw an opportunity that rather than potentially pay for these items through the normal road bond budget, we saw an opportunity to get a grant that could offset some of those costs. So just to update you where we're at in the process now, bids went out through MDOT to various contractors, and they responded to the RFP or to the bid process, and the lowest bidder shared all of the costs, but the lowest bid was brought to us about a week and a half ago. So we don't like to bring you things last minute, but we were kind of held to the MDOT approval process, and the bid process is only open for a certain amount of time, and so we had to move quickly on it, so but this is kind of where we're at now. So you've seen this slide before, but the project's purpose is primarily quality of life and safety, helping residents and visitors and businesses in Ferndale and the surrounding corridor. Hazel Park, Huntington Woods, Oak Park, Pleasant Ridge, Royal Oak all participated in this project. Their portions were primarily through signage, and while a joint application through the TAP process definitely helps your score in winning a grant, being awarded a grant, the threshold for earning a grant through the process with just signage alone was pretty low. So we chose to include some items on our end that are from the Ferndale Moves plan that we thought could bolster our award application, and it helped us win the grant award last July. So there's a number of benefits that we see through any of our bicycle improvements and pedestrian improvements in Ferndale, but this one is very focused on signage, pedestrian safety, and then road enhancements that were part of the Ferndale Moves plan. Connecting with other communities and really providing bicyclists alternate routes in the communities around Woodward. So the route only touches Woodward in 2 places, and it's great for experienced riders and also cyclists that might not be comfortable riding on Woodward. There's a lot of experienced cyclists who are not comfortable doing that yet, and so this gives people an opportunity to get all the way potentially from downtown Hazel Park all the way over to Oak Park in a connected route. We've seen that a lot of the bike infrastructure we've done in the past has spurred development and interest along key corridors like Woodward Heights, Bermuda, Livernois specifically. A couple businesses are moving down there, and including probably the most bike parking I've seen for any project that we've had approved in Ferndale so far. And
and ask in conversations with them, partially why they chose Livernois is because of the improvements. They'd love to see that the city's making those improvements there. And then also just generally health benefits, just other studies we've looked at in the past. Lessening the carbon footprint goes along with a lot of our sustainability goals in the master plan and with the sustainability group. So that's just kind of the general project purpose. But the reason we're here is because when the bids came in, the bids were 16% higher than estimated. So there are kind of a number of factors in how that happened, but primarily the bids just came in higher than expected on some of those key elements that we helped boost our grant award score. Different than projects like Livernois and East 9 Mile, where a contractor is focused in one area. This is a 14-mile route that is kind of spread out, and it will take a few months, but it's spread out through a few different communities. And so that was definitely a factor, but we think that the end goal is justified. In the previous memo that we distributed earlier last week, there was some initial discussion about potentially a crossing at West Lewiston. There was a study being done to remove a signal there, and that was done and evaluated after the bids were submitted, or actually after the grant was written and applied for. And after some discussions over the past week on, how can we really, reevaluate the overages that there were. The total overage that we're recommending and asking for your approval this evening for is for the $47,000 that only covers everything that was in the grant. The crossing for West Lewiston that is on Pinecrest, and talking with just plans for future resurfacing of Pinecrest that can be delayed until and included in the bid process for Pinecrest, not part of this project. So in the end, the project amount that we're talking about, the overage amount, is an additional $47,000 on top of the bid. And hopefully that chart is a little clearer than all of the numbers that were in the memo. But you can see there that the difference between the initial project cost and the as-bid project cost, specifically for Ferndale, we're talking about $159,200, which includes, like I said, signage, and I can go through each of those elements if you like. And then the other communities, their participation number is there at the bottom as well. I'll just quickly go through these, but this is just an image of the overall bike route. You can kind of see, 14 or so miles, kind of spreads across all of those communities, and actually is a loop. And you can get a very quite a far distance between all of those communities. The improvements specifically for Ferndale that we're talking about, I kind of broke these into quadrants, but in the Northwest Corridor, a wayfinding hub, which includes a bike repair station, bike racks, and things over in Geary Park, pedestrian crossing across Camborne to the park, and then also a wayfinding hub that will be located in Schiffer Park, which lines up with our Zipcar potential location coming in the next few months. So it kind of is a hub of, there's a bus station nearby, there's a Zipcar there, a bike repair station. So we kind of see it as a multimodal hub for downtown. Focusing on the Northeast Corridor over Woodward Heights and Hilton Road. We have some bike lanes proposed for there with a wayfinding hub there as well, and then some improved crossings, pedestrian crossings, including across from Webb Elementary, so safer routes for kids to walk to school. Wayfinding hub is definitely a planner type term, but this is an image of what we're proposing that was included in the grant application at 3 locations, and so this is just an image of what Schiffer Park will include with bike racks and the repair station there as well. You're pretty familiar with these, but in the Southeast Corridor segment, there's also, it's primarily signage and pedestrian crossing, so this is an image of what West Marshall and La Prairie would look like. And on the right is an image of a pedestrian crossing at Livernois Street. So we're incorporating a lot of those similar elements that people in Ferndale are familiar with to improve pedestrian safety there. And like I had said before, this project aligns with other projects that we've had that were TAP funded in the past, like West 9 Mile and Livernois. Royal Oak was awarded one for 4th Street in recent years. And so this aligns with what we've adopted in Ferndale Moves. And we feel like this grant award helps accomplish a lot of those goals.
All right.
Yeah, I'm happy to take any questions.
Does anyone have any questions of Justin?
I do, and it's probably self-explanatory, but a wayfinding hub.
Yes.
What is that?
Yes. It's definitely a plannery type term, but it's just essentially a way where people can see what the bike route is. So on the left here, there's a legend and map and logo, similar to the signage that we have downtown right now. And it will have the map on it that shows people how they can get to and from if they wanted to go from downtown Ferndale to Hazel Park, for example.
So just like when you're maybe in the mall and it says you are right here.
Exactly.
Is that what you mean? Okay.
Exactly.
I got
Yep.
it. Okay.
And so with the added bonus that next to these will be a bike repair station as well.
Okay.
So unfortunately, you have a flat tire. Hopefully, you'll know how to change the tire, but you have a stand there where you can pick your bike up and make it easier to change that tire.
Well, I have a comment real quick. I just wanted to say that reading about the new costs added to this project was about as exciting as getting a flat tire. And it was just like, not again. Because it seems like when we go out to bid for these types of projects, we have expectations when we approve our expectations based on what the information is given to us, and then these bids come back a lot higher. And I feel like we've got burned again for some degree, right? And I'm like, here's something that we care about and we're putting our weight behind, and to have a 16% increase is like, oh man, this is not favorable for what we're trying to do. So can you talk a little bit about why?
Sure.
And is there something that we can make sure we don't have a three-peat on a future project? That's my main concern, is that this doesn't keep happening to us. And is this avoidable?
Good question.
Yes, that's a great question.
Justin
I'll
is here from...
The other Justin Wellman from Giffords Webster, I'll let him.
I'm sorry, Councilwoman, could you repeat it? I'm sorry, I was kind of getting...
I was just wondering how, this is our second time where we have approved a project, whether it be city-funded and or grant-funded, where project costs have come back higher than what we originally approved and expected. So I want to make sure that this doesn't happen for the third time. This is not a three-peat. And can we avoid this going into the future? So can we talk a little bit about why this is reoccurring or seems to be reoccurring problem?
Well, there's a number of different factors. As Justin mentioned, it is a very spread out project. And in these small types of projects, where they're only a couple $100,000 as far as when road projects are usually quite substantial, the limited bidders that do these types of projects don't have the resources that more larger contractors have, and that tends to lead to a little bit higher prices. We looked at this early on in just the grant application process, and we worked with, I think, the Greenway Collaborative, who have a little bit more background in these types of features that we're implementing in this program, that we looked at it and tried to give a very conservative number to it. And unfortunately, this The contractors all look at this job as, this is not a production project. And it's spread out, it's not confined, and it was just a very hard number for them to put at. And when they're guessing at how much things are going to cost, they tend to put higher numbers on it.
If I made a Councilwoman Piana's point, and I don't mean this as a criticism at all, but it's not just small road big projects. A year and a half ago, East 9 Mile came back that we went over budget again, and we had to assess more money for that project. So at what point in all these estimates coming in, and if I'm being too harsh to your comment, let me know. But if at one point all these estimates coming in, and we keep having to go back and pour money into it after an initial decision to fund, I mean, when do we hit that sweet spot and we can be comfortable with a bid?
The process we follow is trying to look at how everyone else is doing these projects and how much everyone else is paying for these projects. And the data that we use to do these are based on, typically on last year's numbers, and their average unit costs for the work items that we put in these bids. So there's data there that MDOT shares with all the communities to do that. And over the last few years, prices have skyrocketed. And it's not anticipated when you're doing these projects a year in advance, trying to apply for the grant applications, to know exactly what the prices are going to be a year and a half later. And when we looked at these estimates, we came up with the $280,000 roughly construction cost. MDOT looked at it themselves and estimated at $240,000. So, I mean, we felt like we had a really good number because we were 20% higher than what the state envisioned this cost would be. And I don't know what else to say than these contractors are looking at specialty items that they're not used to bidding on. And that's what's resulting in these high numbers. You know, I don't know what more else I can add to that.
Thank you.
I have a couple questions. The wayfinding hubs, how were those selected?
The elements that were included, or just?
Well, I mean, there's three of them selected. Why were these three selected as opposed to any other intersections?
Sure. Primarily, a lot of it was because of within Schiffer Park and Geary Park, we wouldn't have to secure easements from a private entity, essentially. The one located in Woodward Heights, I believe that we didn't have to secure an easement for that either because it was in our own right-of-way as well. Okay. So it was primarily right-of-way driven and not having to, go back and forth with a private property owner.
Gotcha. Okay. And
can I just, unrelated to that though, about the hubs and the location, can I just ask you, why are they all in Ferndale? Why are there not
Sure.
any?
Yeah, I think a lot of it lends itself to that we're one of the leaders, I think, in multimodal transportation and pedestrian safety in the region. And when we thought about this project, we thought, we want to accomplish our goals as well, but connecting to the outside corridor communities would be important as well. And so all of the property or communities, the planners in the communities, they looked at their plans. Some of them had never applied for a TAP grant before. And so I think that some of them wanted to test out the waters first with signage. I think Huntington Woods is doing some sharrows, and I think that Royal Oak is doing a couple crossings. But most of them, I think it was just they wanted to dip their toes in the water on this TAP project with signage and then see what the reaction is from their communities on that. But I think that it's already encouraged. Oak Park is going to be applying for a TAP grant with this upcoming cycle on West 9 Mile. And I think that this initial success with this project kind of spurred them to say, okay, well, we saw how that process went. Ferndale's been driving that process. Maybe we should drive our own process on the next one. So I think that you're going to see more interest from these types of things in other communities. And even in the initial plans I've seen from the other communities on what they're including in their next TAP grants, I think that they do have at least one wayfinding hub in there as well, so.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay, that's okay. Last year, the residents approved $2 million for park improvements, and part of that package was every park was going to have a bike station, you know, repair station and racking and all that. Okay. Since 2 of these locations are in our parks, was there communication with the Parks and Recs Department to talk about equipment and how the parks can bear the cost because of that grant, because of that millage or the bond actually, so that it doesn't have to be a part of this cost?
There were conversations with the parks about how it would fit in with the overall plans, but not from a cost-sharing perspective. We kind of took it with the approach of if we can, you know, earn this money through a grant award from federal funds, then potentially those dollars for parks could go towards different types of improvements that might be on the plan.
Yeah, I just don't want people to think that we're double charging them.
No.
You know, we're going to have 2 bike racks at these.
No, no. Nope. Definitely good. Yeah, good question.
Imagine them right next to each other.
Yeah.
Through the chair, I have a question. Justin, when we approved the grant, we didn't have progress on the east or west 9 Mile project, the Ferndale 9 House, whatever it's called. And now I think there's discussions about improving Schiffer Park. So how would the Schiffer Park, I think it was a station or a wayfinding hub, how would that be impacted through this grant with the ongoing negotiations with this development?
Sure. The initial, I think, improvements that the developer has been discussing with staff on Ferndale House is primarily for the band shell, proposed band shell. And so this wayfinding hub is closer to the corner of Planavon and 9, whereas the band shell, I think, is further north, close to where the existing alley is, on that edge of the building. And then also on the Ferndale House building, there are some art installations, but this is not close enough to the building that it would be an issue.
I have a question about the Lewiston Pinecrest improvements that you talked about. So, because those improvements need to be made in order to qualify for the grant, right?
The Lewiston crossing does not. So that was initially included after the bid. So we had written the application in July, or were awarded the application in July. That portion was not included. But as we were having discussions about should we do this at the same time, since the study of the signal was happening afterward, we thought we would attempt it to see what the bid would come back at, and the bid did end up coming back higher than expected. We think that probably when we go out to bid to resurface all of Pinecrest, that can come back hopefully a more efficient bid as part of that bigger process, because you're working on one street instead of different corners of 14 miles of bike loop.
Okay.
So I haven't done the math percentage, but so it's 16% over for the 78,000, right? The 47 plus 28. What is it?
It's very confusing. That's where there's 2 Justins on the project.
And so what's the percentage overage at just 47?
That's the 16. That was not the Lewis.
Right.
Oh, that's
the 16% of the overall project cost, construction cost.
Okay.
And then just as a reminder, the federal funds that Ferndale is getting specifically is about $163,000 as part of the grant. So we are spending the most, but we are also getting the most in federal funds back.
So I kind of have a simple question. What is your request of us today?
Yes, I did make it quite confusing for you. The request is for the approval of the additional $46,000 to match the as-bid construction cost. So this does not include that extra Lewiston cost that was initially in the memo. This is specifically for $47,000 to approve with the total project.
You just said 46,000. Now
Excuse
it went
me.
up 46.
Excuse me.
Ask him again.
Can I have 48? No.
So this is just for the $47,000 additional, and then that brings the total overall cost for Ferndale's portion to be $159,200.
And going back to Lewiston, we're not, well, the timing of this, when would this project start? When would we start doing this?
This specific bike route would start in April, wrap up in July.
So whatever improvements or enhancements we were going to do at Lewiston and Pinecrest, we would do those anyway. There's no additional things needed to be done for this. There were just improvements that were going to be made to that intersection.
Yes.
That we were going to do a year from now,
Yes.
that we were moving
Through normal
forward.
process, right? So I appreciate you looking at how to reduce the impact of the cost of this project, and I think it makes it a little bit more palatable in terms of dealing with the overage. So 70,000 to 47,000.
So the $70,500 in the recommendation is incorrect. You're asking for $46,000. $47,000.
Yes, correct.
45. 47,000.
Difference between 112,200 and 159,200, correct? $47,000.
I'll throw in an RPZ permit if you can.
The difference between
Subsidized.
the 112. Correct.
Yeah. $47,000.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. All right. A motion would be in order.
Well, for discussion purposes, I move that the City Council approve the additional funds for the Woodward Neighborhood Bicycle Route.
Support.
By Piana and supported by Polika. All right, now we can have discussion. Additional discussions, comments, questions?
Well, I feel like we're in deja vu land, and back to where we were when we had to have this discussion about West 9 Mile. No, East 9 Mile. East 9 Mile. And at that time, we didn't have any grant funds, did we? April, we didn't have grant funds for East 9 Mile, did we?
I do not believe so.
No, so, right? So the difference between the overage on that project and the overage on this project is that we have federal and state dollars coming in to subsidize this by over 50%. So we can either take that subsidy to help do these, or we, just not do it and then implement some of these changes that are in the Ferndale Moves plan incrementally over time at 100% of the cost versus the grant funds to help offset it.
Is that true? May I ask a question through the chair? Is that, if we say no to this, the projects and the matching funds are completely off the table? Like the grant's off the table if we say no, it's not a go back and carve out $46,000 out of this project?
Correct.
Like take out some bike
Because we
repair
won't,
stuff?
because then we won't qualify.
We won't qualify.
So the things that we put in our particular route area were what made us qualify for the TAP grant, which were already, we didn't make them up, they were already in the Ferndale Moves plan, if you will, and so that's why it made sense to apply for the TAP grant. So yes,
Correct.
if it gets denied today, then that is correct, the grant would no longer exist.
I have a question through the chair.
Yes.
What financial bucket is this coming out of?
Major streets,
Major
not
streets?
the bond.
Okay.
And you mentioned the percentage of federal cost. Just can we nail down what that is? Because the original packet said it was 55%. This one says 70%. I don't know how you determined either one of those numbers.
There's a lot of players in this. He's adding in his head.
And the percentage, and the federal funds, to be clear too, only apply to the construction, not the
amenities?
The design and engineering.
Okay.
Oh, design and engineering, okay.
But 58% of the construction costs.
But not 58% of the total project.
Correct. Right. So we pay for 100% of the engineering, so that doesn't, it's not eligible for federal funding, that portion of it. So, I mean, if you looked at it from an overall project cost, it would be 50-50 essentially.
And by we, do you mean Ferndale or the 5 community partners?
Ferndale.
Pays 100% of the design cost?
Each community paid their own separate design costs, but in our case, we pay 100% of the design. Every community pays 100% of their own design costs.
Costs.
So all of that was split up. We have too many spreadsheets to even count on that.
Gotcha. Okay. So the 70% is not correct. I just want to make sure I'm not throwing that number around. Federal funds make up 70%. That's what it says right there.
That federal funds make up 70% of the grant amount.
Okay.
So the overall federal funds for the entire project for everybody is 194.
Because you've removed the other costs.
Yeah.
I got you.
Yep.
Okay.
And we're getting 100.
That's what was confusing.
Yeah,
to me.
sure.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right.
Through the chair, if I make a comment since there's a motion. There's only, how many, 1, 6, 12, there's only 15 grants that are extended through this program. It's the Michigan Transportation Alternatives Program. And it's highly competitive because there's not a lot of funds out there to help offset the cost of doing multimodal, non-motorized transportation. And if you look at all their grantees, it really is about partnerships.
Absolutely.
And, they funded for this project year Detroit Bike Share, so putting together the network in the downtown. So we're not dissimilar in our attempts to try to build the same thing. And so it's a hard pill to swallow when you approve something and you have to come back and reallocate more funds. And I've thought very serious about this. This is a passion of mine, but at the end of the day, we get 50% off on this investment, even though we have to spend a little bit more, or we spend 100% of the cost incrementally on each intersection and over time without building the network with the cities. And to me, this is about building quality of life and continuing to move down the path of being a leader. And I just think that if we return this grant back to the state, I think would probably position us not so well in the future to be a competitive grantee for more NTAP. And this is our second, right?
Livernois, West 9, this project, yeah, at least those 3. And so, and I think that every year that there's a SEMCOG university where they explain to other communities how they should go about this process, every year we're highly lauded for all of our work, and so it's great to see other communities follow that path. I think we're providing a good example for others, and I think that's why these other 5 communities wanted to participate too.
Yeah, well, you know what? This is the 3rd conversation we've had about this, because we had the same one about West 9 Mile, about how we were going to pay for the cost of that project without a TIF, and not give away that grant money too.
Through the chair, I get it, and I think it's wonderful that we're held up as this pinnacle of bike transit or whatever we call it. And I like being that. I like the fact that we're progressive enough to do that. You put us in a bad spot going back, spending another $46,000 though on a bid we already approved for the 3rd time, with every one of these, and that's the bitter pill to swallow. I like this project. I like the fact that it was expensive to begin with, matched grant or not. And there are 3 alternatives, right? It's to go back and fund whatever we can ourselves, take the matching grant, or there's a 3rd one that says we just don't do anything, and I hate that option, but it's out there. And trying to explain to taxpayers how we keep upping the price on this stuff is I mean, it's tough, you know, and to be good stewards of this money, that's the crux of it. I like the accolades, but I'd give it all back if I didn't have to go ask for another Headley. You know, in all fairness.
Through the chair.
Yeah.
I understand and I agree, and before the meeting, I was under the impression that the numbers were quite different, and I was dead set on being opposed. But now learning that, you know, adding these additional funds is necessary to get the grant, period. And I just feel if we don't go forward, we're not going to end up doing the project as a whole, because we're not going to, it makes no sense for us to fund the entire project. And I'm sorry, I really don't want to be Hazel Park with West End. You know, I don't want to be the community in the middle that, you know, is fighting for this and then being the one that says, oh, no, you know, y'all do what, you know, everything else. I don't want to be that, you know, community. I hate the idea of, you know, coming back again, like, you know, Mayor Pro Tem Piana says, you know, at some point you got to say stop. But I don't think this is an instance of throwing good money at bad.
Well, my opinion is we're continuing to fund into the things that the community has expressed that they want to see changed. Through the Ferndale Moves, through the Michigan Master Land Use Plan that is currently underway, and, you know, the feedback that I've heard from the residents at the Rust Belt sort of all affirms that these are the types of changes that our residents want. So, in addition, you know, I'm trying to work with the school district. I'm trying to do safe routes to school, and this would help. Well, we've been talking about for a while, which is why the school district sat on the Ferndale Moves plan, is so that we could position them to go after that program, and was hoping that they would start on it this year, and these investments would actually help get them going in that direction. So I think leveraging this program or these dollars is going to help other entities outside of Ferndale as well as the cities, but other entities like our school district.
Maybe a question to our city manager. Do we know what the balance of the street funds is?
I believe Cheryl said $2 million. We do have some projects in the pipeline, but she said we had planned on the 112 being covered by that already.
How much of the $2 million do you have planned? Do we have allocated?
I think she said right now for sure 200,000. So I mean, there's things in the pipeline, but again, with the bond approval, we're, you know, still trying to keep some kind of balance there as well for obviously overages possibly for other things, but we are in a good place for that. And again, we had already budgeted the 112. So.
Okay. If I may. Again.
Sure, of course.
And I agree with Mayor Pro Tem Piana. There is, you know, the direction of the community is to move forward, and it's not just the community; it's society in whole. We are going toward more, you know, a variety of transportation options. You know, I have heard a lot of people in the community say, you know, we're building all these bike lanes and no one's using them, but you have to create the opportunity for people to use them in order to use them. We're not going to expect, you know, 80 bicycles on 9 Mile if you don't have the opportunity for them to ride someplace and feel safe. You know, it is changing. The culture's changing. $47,000 is a lot of money, but again, I don't think it's throwing good money at bad. I think it's throwing good money at a good investment for the community.
Any last comments or questions? We do have a motion and a support. All right, Barb, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Pollica.
Yes.
Piana.
Yes.
Leaks May.
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Coulter.
Yes. Thank you. That item is adopted.
Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. And
Thank you,
Justin. Yeah.
Councilman Martin.
Thank you. All right, that concludes our regular agenda. Now on to call to council. There's the police chief, still here. Anything for the good of the community? Nothing this evening, Your Honor. All right. Brian, anything from the fire department this evening? Nothing this evening. Nothing. All right. Justin, anything else from community economic development?
Real quick, Wednesday, prior to our normal planning commission meeting at 5:30, we are holding a special master land use plan workshops with the planning commission. Anyone from the public is welcome as well, and we're going to try and get into some of the more technical aspects with goals and then also future land use maps. So anyone who is available, 5:30 here in council chambers, we'll be discussing that.
All right, excellent. Joe, anything from recreation this evening? Anything else? Besides soccer balls, that's awesome.
Yes, should be a good time. Just one quick announcement regarding the dog park.
Yeah.
For those that are interested that have not gotten their membership yet, part of the requirement to have a membership is to take the dog safety class. Those are held on the second Thursday of the month from 7 to 8 at the Kulik Center. The next one will be April 14th from 7 to 8. And K9 to 5 has also added on 2 Saturday classes for those that aren't able to make it to an evening class. And those will be Saturday, April 9th, one at 9:30 and one at 10:45. Trying to get a jump start on the spring season. So those are available for registration on our website, ferndalemi.gov. Thanks.
Speaking of the dog park, and I don't know if this is you or a Lloyd question, but was it open over the winter, or did people just go in it? It was open. I thought I remembered the original concept being we were going to shut it at some point so that the grass can, have a chance to be whatever, have not dogs on it. I thought the original intent was not to have it open all winter. I could be.
There wasn't a firm decision made.
Okay.
We were going to try to keep it open.
So we talked about that.
And then make an evaluation. And I know that there's been some comments about a muddy dog park.
So that was my comment, is so now that we've left it open all winter, was that wise? What is the condition of the turf, and do we need to do anything to it?
Well,
Or
currently it's dog beach. I had the crew put some drying agents, which is also called sand, in the muddy areas. It primarily was in the large dog area, but based on the amount of traffic, even beyond the thawing conditions that normally occur at this time of year, I think we probably are looking at enlarging the park, which we originally planned for. So at some point in the future, we may want to do that and then just have it where we rotate between the fields.
Does that include grading it so it's not quite at the floodplain, as it were?
That really, from our observations, wasn't the concern because there was appropriate grading. What happens is part of the ground is still frozen, the top portion begins to thaw, and there's a little bit of moisture that has nowhere to go because it can't perk into the ground. In another couple of weeks at 60-degree weather, won't even be a concern. But, with the traffic on that top 2 or 3 inches that's thaw, it turns to mud.
Okay, thank you.
So are we resigned to just being a dirt field for this year until we expand it? Or is there an opportunity to put grass there?
We're still looking at it.
Okay.
We're going to continue to be creative and try to see if there's something we can do. Placing the sand, I wanted to make sure that the members of the dog park would be able to still use it, without getting their dogs incredibly muddy. Particularly when the weather was a little bit colder, they couldn't use the fire hydrant, the fountain that we created to rinse the dogs off very easily in the cold. As the weather gets warmer, we will remove the sand, and we'll start looking at options as far as whether it's wise to enlarge the park or try to establish some sod or seed it. Right in the middle of all of that and making routine observations as what might be a fix.
Okay, cool. And since you're here, anything else from DPW?
It's just that yard waste is due to begin, curbside yard waste pickup is due to begin April the 4th. That's first Monday in April.
That's good to know. I have 3 bags ready to go.
With the weather breaking, we'll be starting to see it out there.
All right, thank you. Joe, anything from your office this evening?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment to viewers that we do acknowledge we've had some technical difficulties with tonight's broadcast regarding some failed Comcast equipment. We will be contacting Comcast first thing in the morning, but I do want to assure you that this rebroadcast will be in color. Right now you're getting to see this black and white, Leave It to Beaver style. So the rebroadcast will be in color.
Like this, the blue and the tie and the green.
So if you do watch this online or back at WFRI.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. Kara, anything from community engagement this evening?
One really quick item on behalf of our city clerk. So after the election last week, we have a survey out for anybody who came out to vote and people who didn't come out to vote for that matter. This is our first election with new precincts. Also, we had some kind of different styles of communication beforehand, so they went ahead and worked to prepare a survey that asked people how they found the communication beforehand, how they found the actual experience of voting in the new precincts, if there were any issues. I can assure everybody that these are looked at very closely, and the responses we get really do help to shape what we do in the future. So the survey is still up. The easiest way to find it would be on the FerndaleMI.gov homepage. It's in the news item at the bottom of the page called Voter Survey. We also did, paper copies, which we handed out at the election. If anybody wants to still take a paper survey, we'd be more than happy to get that to them, so they can email or phone the city clerk's office, and we can work to provide that.
Great. Thank you. All right. Barb, anything from the clerk's office? Speaking of clerks.
Speaking of clerks, just we wanted to thank the voters that came out. We had over 7,000, and so it was a 46.5% of our community came out. And then all of our inspection workers, we had a lot of new people that we picked up from the November election, so which is nice. We'd like to continue encouraging new people because we need ideally 7 to 9 people at each precinct. That doesn't mean that there's going to be 7 to 9 all day. It might mean we might have 15 to 20 for one precinct because they're going to work shifts. So the need is out there, so just call the clerk's office or email us. You can email even elections@FerndaleMI, was it FerndaleMI.gov?
Yes.
Yep.
There we go.
FerndaleMI.gov.
That one's kind of new. So.
Excellent.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
That's it.
April, anything for the city manager's office?
Just a reminder that April 2nd is a budget workshop here at City Hall from 9 to 4. Just a friendly reminder. And public is welcome.
That's my trash pickup.
Your yard waste. That's correct. All right. Well, remember that day. Dan, anything from the legal perspective?
Just one item, following up on the issue regarding the motion, the rules of procedure.
Yes.
I did have a chance to take a look at Robert's Rules of Procedure. The appropriate motion would really be a motion to kill the main motion. And it is required to be seconded, it's subject to debate, and does require a majority.
Okay. I thought you were going to look up my issue of the maker of the motion has to vote for the motion.
I'll look at that
I know you will.
to shoot you an email.
All right. Thank you. Councilman Martin.
I have nothing this evening.
All right. Councilwoman Leaks May.
Let's see. Well, I will say that I had the pleasure of going to festival for our orchestra students just this past Friday. And it was something to see. So if you've not seen these students perform, I recommend that you come out and see them because it was phenomenal. All of our students got ones, which is the top you can get, and it was just really exciting to be around them and their excitement. I have a viola player. Actually, I have 2 viola players. But it was just something to see. And I believe one of the parents whose child is a senior this year informed me that there's going to be a concert on May 19th. So if you want to see some phenomenal kids and their performances, I recommend that you come out and see them. And I think I see, I don't have my glasses on, but I think I see a board member, a school board member.
You do.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Who was also there, and
it
was something to see. Yes.
Thank you. Excellent. Thank you. Councilman Pollico.
Just got one thing. Tomorrow at 5 o'clock is a ribbon cutting for Pops for Italian, Mr. Brian Kramer's new restaurant. So encourage people, if they'd like to come and see what the restaurant's like, to come out for the ribbon cutting.
Yep. It should be good. Following the Daily Dinette. All right. Councilwoman Piana.
Just one thing. We're going to the Capitol Conference next week at MML, and if you haven't reviewed any of the materials coming out, MML is launching a whole new effort on municipal finance reform this year. So tackling a big topic and trying to get our legislators to have a good conversation about why we need to look at it, how we fund our cities in a different way, and public institutions in general. So I look forward to going to the conference with Councilman Martin and
I had to cancel.
Oh, you had to cancel. Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah.
And Councilwoman Raylon Leaks-May. Sorry, Leaks-May. So we'll bring back more information for you later. I think I'm tired. I'm done. Over and out.
And all I have is that it's Councilwoman Piana's birthday today, so I want to say happy birthday to Councilwoman. This is not the most fun way to spend your birthday, or maybe it is, I don't know. I was going to say I didn't get you anything, but I think I got you a bike path, so.
I think the community got a bike path.
Mr. Mayor, can I go out of order for a second? I think it would be negligent not to refer to the fact it's the mayor's birthday on Wednesday.
It is. Okay. It is.
I got you this.
Got a bike path too.
I got you the same gift.
I was wondering, Mayor, before you
Yes. Yes, right.
It's just that I know that there's, we all saw a kind of a preview of the musical, and I don't know if School Board Trustee Butters wanted to mention, is she?
I would be happy to.
Okay.
Come on up. I know I just saw a sign appear on my lawn, semi-magically, that we have a wonderful performance coming up at the high school. We got a sneak preview of it here, of course, a few weeks ago. But yeah, why don't you remind folks?
I do want to thank the council for having the kids. That was a few meetings ago, and I had to miss it, but I know I saw it on video, and they had a great time. I do want to. I need to reprimand Chief Collins because I know that he did have a little something that he needed to announce. He is appearing in the musical this weekend.
Is he dancing? Is there dancing involved?
Mayor Coulter, unfortunately, will be out of town and couldn't, and so we were able to recruit Chief Collins. He is going to be appearing Saturday night. Is that correct? Saturday night. So be sure and get your tickets. It's the Putnam County Annual Spelling Bee is the title of the show. It's a fantastic show. I know you guys saw it. I don't need to go on and on because I know it's late. But I did want to make sure that you found out about Chief Collins. Jessica Kaiser is going to be on Sunday. Pleasant Ridge Mayor Kurt Metzger is going to be on Friday. Jim Poole, our Renaissance Vineyard pastor, is going to be on Friday. So look for that on social networking. It's going to be great.
How do people get tickets?
You can get tickets from me tonight, or you can go to the Ferndale Theater Facebook page.
So it's available at the door too, correct?
Yes, of course. They will be available at the door. It is a fantastic show. They've been working really hard. They open Friday night. It's Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday afternoon. One weekend only, so do not procrastinate. You should come see this show. It's fantastic. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councilman Leaks-May.
And on that note, our meeting is adjourned.
All right.
Brian is going to call in tomorrow.